Good evening and welcome to the City of Roswell Mayor and City Council meeting of Tuesday, October the 14th, 2025. I am Mayor Kurt Wilson. I'd like to introduce my colleagues and council members present. Councilmember Sarah Beeson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Lee Hills, Councilmember David Johnson, Councilmember William Mortland, and Councilmember Alan Sells. I will now turn the meeting over to our Chief Administrative Officer and City Administrator, Mr. Randy Knighton, to explain how the meeting is run. Mr. Knighton.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson, and good evening, everyone. In accordance with Section Chapter 3.70 of the City Code, the City Council shall hold regular public meetings. The purpose of City Council meetings are for the public to participate and speak on agenda items which constitute formal decisions by the elected body. These items are listed on the published agenda, which can be accessed via the city website prior to the meeting. This is a public meeting, and some items do require a formal public hearing. An important component of city council meetings are to hear directly from residents on items listed on the agenda and warrant discussion. Residents are at the top of the organizational chart, and therefore public comments and questions are essential as mayor and council contemplate each decision. If you wish to speak on an agenda item, please complete a comment card, which can be found at the back of the room. And also our communications staff member, Miss Alyssa Brown. Where's Alyssa? There's Alyssa. Alyssa Brown can take your comment cards. She will provide them to our city clerk, and speakers will be called by the city clerk for each agenda item in the order the cards are received. I do want to make one notation. Tonight, one agenda item is the initiation and presentation of the mayor's budget, the mayor's 2026 budget. And because this is an initiation and first presentation, there will not be any public comments taken on that item. Public comments will be received on October 20th at 6:00 p.m. in the first reading, and also on October 27th for the second reading and adoption. Excuse me. I'd also encourage residents, if you're interested in elements of the budget, the mayor and council held a budget workshop on October 1st, which was live streamed and recorded and placed on the city's website. We ask that everyone observe the principles of mutual respect and display the appropriate demeanor during the course of the meeting this evening, which is reflective of this great community. And with respect to the proceedings, we ask that attention is given to the person speaking. And if it is necessary to have an independent conversation, we ask that you exit the rear doors to the vestibule area. We also ask that you silence any electronic devices at this time. The mayor is the presiding officer and will ensure that there is an orderly exchange of comments, questions, and discussion leading to any decision by the elected body. And we encourage everyone, of course, the viewing audience and those in attendance to visit Roswell365.com for a calendar of events. We also encourage you to participate in those various activities here in the city of Roswell. There are a number of events upcoming in the city of Roswell which promote community, leisure, and physical activity as we all make Roswell the #1 family community in America. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. As always, at this time I have the great privilege. I'd like to ask Gabby Sparacco, Assistant Director of Campus Ministry from Blessed Trinity Catholic High School, to the front for the invocation and moment of silence. Welcome, Gabby.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gabby Sparacco, and I'm honored to be here tonight to lead prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with grateful hearts. Thank you for the many and abundant blessings you have given us, for life itself, for the health and strength to serve, for friendship and community, and for the privilege of working together for the good of others. Thank you for the freedom to seek what is right and true, for loving us from your boundless and gracious nature. As we gather in this meeting, we ask for your guidance, wisdom, and support. Grant our mayor, council members, and all who serve this city the clarity to make decisions that promote peace, order, and justice. Help us to speak with respect, listen with open hearts, and work with integrity and compassion. May our efforts tonight strengthen the bonds of community and reflect our shared desire to serve all people. Lord, fill us with your grace and remind us that all we accomplish here is for the greater good and the service of humanity. Now, let us take a moment of silence to lift up the good intentions in our hearts for our community, our neighbors, and our world. Ask all of this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Gabby. Very nice. Gabby Sparacco, the Assistant Director of Campus Ministry for Blessed Trinity Catholic High School. Thank you so much, Gabby. At this time, I have the great privilege to ask United States Captain Roger Hill to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, sir. Rock and roll. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Captain Hill. I'm going to ask you to stay right there, if you don't mind, for the first item under the Mayor's Report, which is a reading of the proclamation for the esteemed Veteran of Roswell Award. Thank you. Council, please join me. Proclamation, Office of the Mayor, Captain Roger Hill, esteemed Veteran of Roswell. Whereas the city of Roswell, Georgia, proudly recognizes the extraordinary men and women who have worn the uniform of the United States Armed Forces, defending our freedom and exemplifying the highest ideals of service, sacrifice, and leadership. And whereas Captain Roger Hill answered the call to serve our nation following his graduation from the United States Military Academy at West Point, one of the most prestigious and demanding leadership institutions in the world, where he developed the character, discipline, and commitment to excellence that would define his military career. And whereas Captain Hill honorably served in the United States Army as an Army Ranger and company commander in Afghanistan, leading his soldiers through some of the most challenging combat operations with courage, integrity, and devotion to duty. And whereas his exemplary leadership and steadfast commitment to the welfare of his troops earned him the admiration of his peers, the respect of his superiors, and the gratitude of a nation. And whereas following his distinguished service, Captain Hill continued his mission of leadership and service by advocating for veterans, mentoring young leaders, and contributing to civic life in the city of Roswell, embodying the values of West Point's creed: duty, honor, country. And whereas Captain Hill's lifelong dedication to service, both in uniform and as a citizen, reflects the very best of American character, inspiring others to lead lives marked by courage, responsibility, and compassion. Whereas the city of Roswell and its citizens are deeply grateful for Captain Hill's exemplary service to our country and his continued contributions to our community. Now, therefore, I, Kurt M. Wilson, Mayor of the city of Roswell, Georgia, do hereby name Captain Roger Hill, an esteemed veteran of Roswell, and call upon all our citizens to recognize his outstanding service to our country and to our community, and that there is no higher calling than those who serve the United States Armed Forces. Congratulations, Captain Hill. Thank you, sir. Captain Hill, I'm going to give you the mic, but I am going to add one ad hoc comment. He left out so much of his career there. I talk about humility. This cat, you can already tell, is pretty humble and an exemplary career, and didn't even want to share all of his amazing accomplishments, just the fact that he served.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Baby, thanks for loving me so well. And thank you to all my friends and for you all for your time and showing up and showing appreciation tonight. This is a great community. We've been here for a little over 8 years. I think we've missed 1 or 2 of the Memorial Day ceremonies. And we truly appreciate how well Roswell loves its veterans, law enforcement. I'm so thankful for those of you that serve day in and day out. We truly owe all of you a debt of gratitude. You can ask anybody that I know and know well that I say that your service is head and shoulders above those of us that go overseas for a year or 2. So thank you for doing what you do for our community every day. Yeah, thanks for this. Appreciate your time.
Get some pictures with the family. Don't go. Oh my gosh, those are so cool.
You know, Councilmember Johnson also wears blue cowboy. Yeah. Showing you up all week.
Delighted to honor you this evening.
Yeah, stay here.
Listen, give him a shout.
So happy birthday to Risen Dewey today, who turned 5 today and took time out of his very busy schedule to grace us with his presence. Happy birthday. We'll spare you from the singing. That's really a birthday in of itself, but happy birthday.
Can I introduce everybody really quick? Okay, so this spicy redhead right here is Abigail, my wife. Michael, my oldest son. Emma, my daughter. Honor Alexander, Valor Hosea, and then Risen Dewey. Yep. Thank you all for allowing us to be here. Yeah.
Is this on? Thank you, Captain Hill and family. You get a sense of like tremendous service and humility with that family and that man right there who served us so well. Well, speaking of service, the next item on the mayor's report is the reading of the esteemed Roswell Public Safety Employee Award to Financial Coordinator Timothy Britt as the 2024 Civilian of the Year. Timothy, will you come forward, please, sir? Hello. Good to see you. Proclamation, Office of the Mayor, Roswell Police Civilian of the Year, Timothy Britt. Whereas esteemed Roswell Public Safety employee Timothy Britt has been named as the Civilian of the Year for 2024. And whereas Timothy Britt has been employed with the Roswell Police Department for 2 years. During that time, he has honorably served the Police Records Department and has since been promoted to the position of Police Financial Coordinator. And whereas Mr. Britt has proven himself to be invaluable in handling both public and Fulton County requests while in the Records Department. His efficiencies helped the overwhelming workload in the records to become more manageable despite the increase in the number of requests received. And whereas Tim Britt has a natural talent for helping others, he continuously thinks of creative ways to improve our department's efficiency and effectiveness. He brings a healthy sense of humor to the workforce. He is kind, intelligent, eager to learn, and consistently offers support to his colleagues. And whereas Mr. Britt is a valuable part of the team, ensuring that no one person is overwhelmed. He's created a more balanced and supportive work environment. His infectious sense of humor brings joy to the workplace, creating a positive atmosphere. And whereas Timothy Britt is truly an asset to our team and to the police department as a whole, which uniquely qualifies him for the 2024 Civilian of the Year. Now, therefore, I, Curtin Wilson, Mayor of the City of Roswell, Georgia, do hereby recognize and honor Timothy Britt for his outstanding service and call upon all of our employees and citizens to recognize his outstanding service and unwavering commitment to the City of Roswell, Georgia. Congratulations, Timothy. Thank you, sir.
The microphone. 23 years as a small business owner and called it quits and said, what am I going to do next? Not expect to find a second career, much less a family at a police department. It took me a good 6 months before I would walk down the hallway and not snap to a 17-year-old when I saw all the police and go, oh, gee. It's been a very rewarding experience for me. Learned a lot, especially since I've lived in Roswell 27 years. And Roswell Police Department, prior to working there, were zero. So, thank you.
That's part of your background check.
That's right.
Right. So, thank you very much. I appreciate that. My family, I'm delighted that they're here. Thank you.
So, yeah, Tim came to us a couple years ago working in our records and permits section and did great. We found out that he had a penchant for numbers, which was good. He was always doing statistics and reports for us when requested. And when this financial coordinator position came open, he was a natural fit for it. The sense of humor, I'm glad we mentioned him there. He has a tremendous sense of humor, holds his own within the police department, which is very difficult to do. So, but we thank you. And again, I thank his family for letting him spend his days with us.
Let's stay right here. Let's get a picture. Family.
Yeah, you get tight.
Oh, we're upstairs. Go back up. Yep. I think. Well, we have one more fun item tonight, or I should say a fun item, which next to last item on the mayor's report is a presentation of the very important 2025 Roswell Rotary First Responders Championship Trophy. I'd like to ask my good friend John Reddick from the Roswell Rotary to come forward and present the trophy, and I believe Chief Conroy will be present, and perhaps some of the golf team that hazardly won this trophy.
Good evening, members of council, Mayor Wilson. It's a pleasure to be here. Roswell Rotary, every year, and Chief, hosts our golf, tennis, and now pickleball tournament. Each year, we raise over $200,000 after expenses. That directly goes to multiple charities in North Fulton County. Examples would be North Fulton Community Charities, Drake House, and Human Trafficking, etc. 3 years ago, we created the Roswell Rotary First Responders Championship Trophy, and then we invited each department, the police and the fire, to join us on our tournament and have a little competition. And so we're pleased now tonight with my colleague Trumi Lee Patrick, president of Roswell Rotary, to be able to present this trophy to the incumbent winner from last year, Roswell Police Department. And I'll have now Trumi present our trophy for 2025 to the reigning champion.
Mayor Wilson, I'll have you know there were 2 attempts to steal this trophy tonight. I don't know where those gentlemen are, but it's a very coveted deal. Congratulations to the police department.
President Trumi, Patrick, at Roswell Rotary, that trophy is not safe, and unfortunately, there are people who are willing to steal it from the police, and they are wearing white uniforms. Thank you, Roswell Rotary. It's so cool. And we just get a little picture with everybody, right? You want the council down here with a picture with you guys? It's a pretty bad golf team. I hate to do it, but why not?
We have 2 of our golfers are here. Officer Caldera and Officer Welty are here. The other 2 could not get off work, but Officer Melly and Officer Smith.
Let's take a little picture with everybody. Congratulations, Chief. You do. Wow. Wow.
Pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. All right, let's do it. All right, Truly, hold this up. Hold this up, John, hold this up. You guys want to put your hands on this? All right, everybody give the police and Roswell Rotary.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Walter. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Roswell Rotary, thank you. Congratulations, police. Sorry, fire, for another loss. Kind of expected again next year, so, you know, it's all right. Better things will come for fire. Hey, tonight we've got, last on the mayor's report is the Roswell results update. And I think I'm mixing it up a little bit tonight,
That's
so I
right.
apologize. The update will be presented by Pro Tem and Councilmember Lee Hills and by Councilmember Sarah Beesons, while a slide presentation is showed on the screen. Ladies, the floor is yours.
My chair is sinking, so if I start dropping down, just pay no attention to that. The City of Roswell recently created the Roswell Results website to provide residents and businesses insight into current transformational projects across the city. In lieu of providing a list of upcoming events, as is typical at the top of council meetings, tonight we will summarize a few key updates from roswellresults.com to keep you, the public, informed. You can still find upcoming events from our typical updates at roswell365.com.
We'll start tonight with one of the biggest projects that's poised to transform a key property adjacent to City Hall into a vibrant mixed-use area, the Hill Street redevelopment. What was once our former police headquarters and predominantly industrial buildings will soon become a mixed-use district in the heart of downtown where people can live, work, dine, and gather along walkable streets and green space. Through a public-private partnership, the project will include offices, restaurants, townhomes, multifamily housing, and public parking that reflect Roswell's charm. We'll learn more about this exciting project tonight as it is included on the City Council meeting agenda.
You may have noticed she said the Hill Street housed our former police headquarters, which begs the question, where is RPD going? Thanks to voters' overwhelming approval of a $52 million bond question in public safety bonds in 2022, Roswell's new public safety headquarters is nearly complete, bringing our police and fire departments together under one roof. Rather than spending an estimated $54 million building an entirely new public safety facility, the City of Roswell opted to renovate an existing facility for $8 million, saving $11.5 million on the asking price.
Additionally, as part of Public Safety Bond Initiative, we're investing in the future of emergency response with a new E911 and Emergency Operations Center at 11261 Alpharetta Highway. This $5.9 million purchase includes a 6.3-acre site and an 18,000 square foot facility that meets catastrophe-resistant standards, saving the city time and money compared to building a similar building from scratch.
Another major project along one of Roswell's major thoroughfares is the Bowen and Highway 92 redevelopment. The city and our development authority recently signed a letter of intent with SJC Ventures to purchase that property for $5 million, a $500,000 gain over our initial purchase price in 2023. As an added benefit to residents and businesses alike, the city is retaining 2.5 acres to build a new Fire Station 23 to improve coverage and response times for the fire department.
Continuing the theme of investing in public safety, on October 4th, we officially launched Slow Down in Roswell at Youth Day, a citywide campaign reminding everyone that protecting lives starts with driving safely. We're pairing education and awareness with real engineering improvements like new signage, resurfacing, and our ongoing review of the city's residential traffic calming policy. And for continued investment in pedestrian and bike infrastructure, we're expanding Roswell's trail network. We already have 22.9 miles of multi-use trails with another 57 miles either under construction or in its planning stages.
Roswell has reached another milestone that directly benefits residents and businesses, the launch of the new Roswell Permitting and Licensing Hub. Replacing nearly 100 paper applications and hundreds of email-based processes across 8 departments, the hub creates a true one-stop shop for business permits, building permits, business licenses, and inspections. Launched just yesterday, the system's first day saw more than 100 new users create accounts and begin processing applications. Customers can now apply, pay, track, and receive approvals online with real-time inspection results, centralized plan reviews, and smart reporting tools that improve accuracy and turnaround time. By replacing outdated manual processes with a streamlined digital platform, Roswell is developing a faster, more transparent, and user-friendly experience, another step toward greater efficiency, accountability, and modern service delivery. These are the results that show how strategic planning, fiscal responsibility, and community input come together to deliver progress. Roswell Results isn't just about projects, it's about purpose. Visit roswellresults.com to stay current on how we're building a stronger, safer, and more connected Roswell together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills. Thank you, Councilmember Beeson, for the Roswell Reports update. And that ends the mayor's report for this evening. Next is the consent agenda, of which there are 2 items on the consent agenda. City Clerk Nancy Long, are there any Roswell residents who would like to speak on the consent agenda?
There are no speakers for the consent agenda.
Thank you so much, Nancy. At this time, does council have any comments or questions regarding the consent agenda? Thank you, council. If there are no comments or questions regarding the consent agenda, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion made by Councilmember David Johnson. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Alan Sells. All those in favor of passing the consent agenda tonight, please do so by raising your hands. Let the record show that the vote is 6-0 and the consent agenda passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next is the regular agenda. The first item is, City Clerk Nancy Long, would you please read the first item on the regular agenda?
Yes, this is approval of a memorandum of understanding for a redevelopment project known as City Center. This is presented by Chief Legal Officer and City Attorney David Davidson.
Thank you, Nancy.
Mayor, with your permission, I request that this item be withdrawn at this time. Late last evening, a few legal issues arose that we were not able to work through. I would like to withdraw it and bring it back at a future date.
Thank you, Chief Legal Officer David Davidson. Does any comment from council? Councilmember Sells?
Yeah, just one quick comment. Thank you, David, for honchoing that. And this project's been a long time in the making, but this is the kind of thing that we have been talking about. And that is, we're talking to the developers. In this particular case, it's really matchmaking. That's what we're doing. And the developer and the landowner are coming together, and lo and behold, they found a legal hurdle on the landowner side. So we had to pull this. But this is the kind of thing where it finally comes to a head, and the residents of Roswell get to speak to this issue. So this is the kind of thing we're going to be doing a good bit of in the next few months.
Thank you, Councilmember Sells. Any other comments from council? Being that there are none, the item is withdrawn from tonight's agenda and will be brought up when it is prepared and ready to go. Thank you so much, David. Appreciate that. Thank you for your comments, Councilmember Sells. Go to the second item. City Clerk Nancy Long, would you please read the second item on the regular agenda?
Yes, this is a presentation of the FY24 6 months annual comprehensive financial report and audit presented by Bill Godshall, Chief Financial Officer.
Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I will be presenting a financial update for the 6-month period ending December 31st, 2024. This presentation summarizes our audit results, key financial highlights, and actual results compared to budget during the transition period. Just to cover our overview, our agenda for tonight, I'll begin with an overview of the 6-month audit and why we underwent the audit. I'll then summarize the audit results, highlights of key financial trends, and conclude with the budget to actual performance of the general fund. After my presentation, I will turn it over to our auditor, who I'll introduce later, for his report. So let's start with the audit review. The city completed an audit of its financial statements for the 6-month period, July 1st through December 31st, 2024. This was a special transition audit to align with our new calendar year fiscal cycle. As you know, we changed our year end from June 30 to December 31, and that creates a 6-month transition period. I'm pleased to report the city received an unmodified opinion or clean audit opinion, the highest level of assurance possible. There were no material weaknesses and no instances of noncompliance. The audit has been completed and filed on time and will be posted to the city's website for full public access after this meeting. So I want to cover briefly some of the reasons why we get an audit, and particularly this 6-month audit, which is off cycle, so to speak. First, Georgia law requires every city and county to have an independent audit each fiscal year. This 6-month audit kept us compliant during our transition period from a June 30 year end to a December 31 year end. Otherwise, we would have had an unaudited gap of 6 months, which would have posed a lot of problems. Second, our city code and charter require annual audit financial statements to be included in the annual comprehensive financial report. This is a report that includes a lot of stuff about the city: statistical information, fund balance reviews, 10-year histories of certain key statistics, things like that. By performing this audit, we maintain accountability and transparency even as we changed our fiscal year, so the transition period is included. Federal law requires what is known as a single audit, when total federal grant spending exceeds over $750,000. Completing this audit ensures that we remain eligible for federal funding going forward. In addition, our bond covenants associated with general obligation bonds and other borrowings of the city require that we provide annual audited financial statements to those bond holders. This keeps us in compliance with both SEC disclosure rules and protects our relationships with the bond holders. If we were not to follow obtain these audits, then our interest rates would most certainly go up. Beyond compliance, completing the audit reinforces transparency, accountability, and it supports our AAA bond rating, which is the highest, as you all know, and strengthens confidence as we enter into the 2025 fiscal year. And as an aside, that AAA rating was reaffirmed in June of 2025 as we entered into the second tranche of the GO bonds. We did have a process finding from this audit. The finding was related to the transition period itself. Changing our fiscal year required additional year-end adjustments on a cycle that we had not previously encountered, particularly around accruals and classifications. All adjustments were recorded, and the auditors confirmed that our financial statements are fully compliant with GAAP, or generally accepted accounting principles, which is a framework under which we have to prepare the financial statements and a framework that the auditors evaluate the preparation of our financial statements. We've now revised our cash to accrual adjustment processes to align with our year-end closing process so that this will be a seamless effort in future audits. With that foundation, I'd like to cover the city's overall financial position. As of December 31, 2024, the city's cash and investments total $295 million, up from $270 million at June 30 of 24 and $266 million a year earlier, June 30, 2023. Total assets reached $630 million, while net position, our equivalent of net worth, rose to $442 million, up from $415 million just 6 months ago, June 30, 2024. In short, I believe this shows continued financial strength and liquidity during the transition period. Over the 5 years, the city's total cash and investment balances have grown significantly, from roughly $105 million in 2020, as you can see on the right-hand side of the chart, to over $280 million at the end of 2024, which is on the left-hand of the chart. And these amounts are in millions. And then the last number is for the 6 months ended December 31, 2024. This steady growth reflects sound financial management and careful spending control across all departments. To focus on the government net position, again, our net equity, our net worth has increased to $402.8 million from the 6-month period compared to $351 million last year, and continue to grow throughout the 5-year period from 2020. The continued growth underscores the city's strong financial health and long-term stability. Now I'd like to look at the general fund's performance, since this is where we conduct most of our city operations at any given time. And you'll see the same story here as well. The general fund's unrestricted balance grew to $34.5 million, up from $29.4 million 6 months ago and $26.3 million in 2023. And you can see that it grew also from baseline of 2020. The Government Finance Officers Association, or the GFAO's best practice threshold is to ensure that we can reserve at least 25% of our fund balance, or 3 months, for budgeted operating expenditures. Based on an unrestricted fund balance at December 31, 24 of $34.5 million, we could reserve up to approximately 33% of the budgeted operating expenditures in 2025, well in excess of the recommended best practice by the GFOA. These reserves gives us flexibility and resilience if economic conditions do not map out the way we expect them as we prepared the 2025 budget last year, and we'll be in a similar situation as you'll hear in the budget presentation next, that we have sufficient reserves to cover the first 3 months of or cover any 3 months of the operating budget. So I'd like to cover activity highlights real quick, sort of the equivalent of the income statement. For the 6-month period ended December 31, 2024, total revenues were $62 million, which consists of $55 million in tax revenue and about $7 million in other revenues, including certain fees and miscellaneous items. Expenditures net of debt service were $60.9 million, and debt service added another $700,000. It's really not comparable to compare this 6-month number to the two previous 12-month numbers. We are a cyclical city in the way we incur revenue, the way we collect revenue, and the way we incur expenditures. Our revenues have 3 different cycles depending on the ad valorem tax, business tax, the property tax, and then sales tax is somewhat throughout the city, but even that gets cyclical during the retail period. So it's hard to just say multiply by 2 and compare it to the prior 12 months. I think the more important message out of this is that even in a transition period with some distractions of how to handle the transition period internally at finance, we still had a small surplus of $400,000. Means we lived within our means while maintaining the essential services and progress on key initiatives that you, the mayor, and council have set for us. And when we compare these numbers to the budget, the picture continues, in my opinion, to get better. Compared to budget, revenues were just slightly below forecast, less than 1% variance, while expenditures were $5.6 million under budget. The difference was largely due to timing of projects and some staff vacancies. As a result, our unassigned fund balance increased by $5.2 million, ending at over $34 million. This positions the city well as we began our first calendar year's budget cycle in 2025, and as we move through that process into the 26 budget that you'll hear after my presentation. In summary, the city's received a clean audit opinion with no material findings. The financial position remains very strong with robust cash reserves and a growing net position, and we're well prepared for the future and fully compliant with all state, federal, and bond requirements. I want to thank you for your attention, and I'll now turn it over to Mr. Ian Van Wyck, who is our audit partner with CK8 CPAs and Advisors, our independent auditing firm, so he can deliver his presentation on the audit.
Welcome, Ian.
Thank you for the introduction, Bill. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, members of the public. So I'm going to go. Can we go to the outline, please? Slide early. Yes, there we go. So just a quick outline of what we're going to discuss today. So we'll do an overview of what's included in the management report. We'll do an overview of the engagement that we performed, explain the auditor's opinion, how we use technology when we do the audit, key audit risks, internal controls and compliance, significant matters. So just to point out, with significant matters, that does not mean that anything is bad. Those are just items that we would like to share with you that we picked up during the course of the audit or added disclosures to the financial statements. And then we'll go over to questions and answers. Okay, so the management report is a document that goes to those charged with governance, who in this case is the council. And we as auditors have a responsibility to share a report of what we have seen during the course of the audit. And this is more outside of the numbers. It's not just auditing the financial numbers itself, but also what we see inside the organization. So the first part of the report is to communicate the results of the audit. The second part is to explain what the period was covered. And then the third part is to explain the standards under which we performed the audit, which is the generally accepted auditing standards, as well as the government auditing standards, and then the financial statement preparation under the framework of US GAAP, as well as the GASBs. And then this report is intended specifically for council. So the engagement overview, Bill had already alluded to the fact that we looked at a 6-month period. The purpose of the change in the period was to get operational alignment for construction project and property tax cycles. We had to gain or request an extension from the Department of Accountants and Auditors to file the audit report in time, which they have granted, and we have submitted that report within the timeline. We also covered adjustments required to the accounting software setup. So during the course of the audit, given the change of the year end, they had to make substantial changes within their reporting functions. The financial statement disclosures had also been adjusted accordingly. You can imagine that when you want to prepare comparatives, that comparing a 6-month period to a 12-month period requires additional explanation. Then lastly, there was specific emphasis placed on the recognition of property tax revenue. Bill and I had a few goes at that and finally came to an agreement, and we were happy with the treatment that we're seeing in the financial statements. Okay, so our opinion was, as Bill had mentioned, a clean audit opinion, which means an unmodified opinion. Just to explain what the opinion covers, so we cover all the governmental activities, business type activities, but then also each opinion unit, which means if you look at the financial statements, it lays out various different funds. It also includes non-major funds as well as discretely presented component units. Each one of those funds requires separate audits with separate levels of materiality and samples provided. So each one of those units should be seen as though it's a consolidation of subsidiaries in the same fashion as what you would do for a commercial audit. Key risks and responses. So what we are indicating here is as we start each audit, we have to identify the presumed risks or the areas that we consider to be of risk. These are already determined by the auditing standards and the Yellow Book principles. It guides us to determine that there's a presumed or underlying risk of management override of controls, as well as improper revenue recognition. We have added a risk to that, which is for the improper use of restricted resources. So I'll start with the first risk, which is the risk of management override. So in this particular case, you look at areas where management has control or the ability to influence the outcome of transactions. In those areas, we apply professional skepticism. We look specifically at journal entry testing, the review of accounting estimates, as well as the evaluation of extraordinary or out of the usual norm of transactions. In this particular case, we have not identified any issues. Second to that, when we look at revenue recognition, revenue is always presumed to be a significant area of risk. We focus significantly on the completeness of the revenue recognition. And in this particular audit, we also paid specific attention to the occurrence and the cutoff of property tax income. Our responses to these procedures, we performed substantive testing, we confirmed significant transactions, we looked at the revenue recognition in terms of GASB, as well as reconciling subsidiary systems to the general ledger. Again, in this particular instance, we have not identified any issues. The third one, in terms of the improper use of restricted resources, we are looking specifically at fund balances such as T-Splast and bond proceeds. We review compliance with imposed restrictions, tested expenditures charged for allowability, and reconciled restricted fund balance activity. Again, no issues noted. So in today's times, and given the volume of transactions that we see, there is a requirement for us to consider alternative ways of auditing. And this is referred to as electronic data processing software or the use thereof. So how we use the software is we test for the completeness of the transactions. So we will take the general ledger that's provided by the city, and we will import this into our software to confirm the completeness of the utility billing, payroll, vendor disbursements, as well as other transactions. Then we use it to validate compliance with policies. So we will look at procurement transactions against established thresholds and approval requirements. Thirdly, to identify anomalies and irregularities. So we look out for duplicate detection, gap analysis, trend analysis to identify duplicate transactions, as well as transaction exceeding approval limits. Lastly, we strengthen our audit trail and transparency. So we have an electronic audit trail, which means that all of our procedures can be reperformed and give us reliability for audit conclusion. So then we come to internal control and compliance, and this is just an overview of the areas where we look and audit our internal controls. So the first one is we look at access controls. So we verify the access to the bank accounts are restricted. We verify that access to financial and accounting software is restricted, and we test modification to the financial management system. So this is access controls where there's changes in people having access, making sure that all of those are authorized. Then secondly, we look at revenue and collections. We review the billing process for utilities and property taxes. Then we look at procurement and disbursements. We look at purchases in line with the procurement policy, verify purchase order requests, invoice processing, account coding, and payment authorization. Finally, review supporting documentation for procurement requiring formal bidding. Next one, payroll and human resources. We tested new hires and terminations to verify pay rates and access to payroll, reviewed segregation of duties of payroll preparation, approval, and disbursement, reconciled payroll registers to the general ledger. Grants and restricted funds. Reviewed financial reports for grant compliance and traced these to supporting documentation and the general ledger. Tested expenditures from T-SPLOST funds to verify compliance with restrictions. Budgetary and governance oversight. We review budget amendments and compare them to official meeting minutes to confirm appropriate approval and authorization. Then lastly, as Bill had alluded to as well, there's a requirement that we test the schedule of federal expenses. In this year's audit, the federal grant that we have audited was the ARPA grant, or otherwise referred to as the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund grant. In this particular case, we had to perform procedures as under the uniform guidance provided by the state and by the government. So the first part of it is to review the program objectives and its procedures. We assess the compliance requirement and test the compliance with all the requirements that are stipulated. Just in terms of what was said earlier, we did not identify any material weaknesses or compliance findings. So significant matters, as I said before, these are just items that we wish to bring to the attention of Council and Mayor. So the first one is that we had to make an adjustment this year to the financial statements coming from a new GASB introduction. So there's a new GASB for compensated absences, which included the raising of an additional liability of $2.8 million in the accounts. The next one is we do audit accounting estimates. So these are items like pension liabilities, allowance for doubtful accounts, compensated absences, and useful life of capital assets. We considered each of these reasonable. In debt service fund presentation, we have added a new major fund for debt service, so you will notice that in the financial statements. On the pension plan, we would like to point out that there was a transition from the Georgia Municipal Employee Benefit System to Transamerica, and the change was also then on the actuary side. So we work closely with City to make sure that the disclosures are appropriately accounted for in these financial statements. There is a new disclosure of a related organization. We've included the Friends of Roswell and Parks. We've also added a new component unit, which is the Development Authority of Roswell. Then in terms of budget to actual reporting, we have not identified any instances where the actual expenditures exceeded budget. Grant activity, we mentioned we audited the coronavirus fund. And then from a litigation perspective, there's ongoing litigation and legal actions, but none of those are considered to have a material or adverse effect on the financial situation or position of the city. Subsequent events, we are aware that there was bonds issued of $93.4 million, and then also the Public Facilities Authority had purchased a property to the value of $10 million. Those items were part of our disclosures in the financial statements. Then just upcoming pronouncements. So an upcoming pronouncement means that there is new accounting standards coming out, and the next one that they will be rolling out is for certain risk disclosures. So this is very consistent with what you see in the FASBs and the disclosure of commercial financial statements, which will focus specifically on concentration and constraint risk. Thank you very much, everyone.
Ian, thank you so much, and Bill, thank you so much, and financial team under Bill, great job. And Randy, would you just add, was based upon, before I turn it over to Nancy, you've been in, how long you been in this business?
Approximately 30 years.
30 years. And would you just kind of share with everybody who CKH is?
Yes, they're an independent audit firm who operates, and there are only a few audit firms that operate in a certain space, but they have extensive knowledge of not only governmental accounting, but beyond that, private sector accounting. And so they provide an independent audit of all of the city's funds, as you saw here in the presentation, and obviously are completely independent in their review and analysis. And so, given their reputation and given their firm's standing, the results of their audit certainly are provide veracity to the city's financial position.
Thanks, Mr. Knight. Thank you. Ian, thank you. Bill, stand by. City Clerk Nancy Long, are there any Roswell residents who would like to speak on this item?
Yes, Mayor, we have one speaker, Daryl O'Hare.
Daryl, you're saying the presentations aren't in the agenda? Yeah, I don't have it in mine either. Councilmember Sells? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I asked Bill, so we are on a short time frame, and this is an odd time, Daryl, as you know, for the time of year, right? Usually this is done at the end of the prior year. So I asked Bill to look and see how long the time was between the audit opinion and the presentation of the financial statements in past years. And I believe that it's 42, 45, 47, 47, 48. If yesterday wasn't a holiday, we would have been at 49 days. So we have gotten the financial statements out in a timely fashion. The actual presentations were still in process. So all of this will be available tonight, I suppose, or certainly first thing tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that's a great question. Bill, will this be available online, all of this?
All of the presentations, including the audited financial statements, Ian's presentation, my presentation, will all go online after this meeting tonight. And then so will the budget presentation and the budget book will also go online after Adam and Lynn's presentation.
So all of this will be online?
Yes, sir.
Daryl, would you like to come up and ask a question?
Mayor and Council, I just as it's more a matter of, knowing if I'm going to come speak or not, because I have to put my card in ahead of time. So when I don't see the items in the agenda, that's where it becomes complicated, because I don't know if I have something to say or not, and usually I like to review the materials beforehand. So I simply filled it out in case I had something to say. But I would like to point out that maybe we can change that you have to sign up ahead of time thing, because if we don't know that the materials are going to be here, we might then be able to make a comment, or maybe there could be something that says materials will be presented at the meeting, because I plan my evening around coming to do these wonderful presentations, which were great. Thank you. So, but I do like to come prepared if I can. So that's all I'm asking. I understand that it's a busy season, so I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Daryl. Would any other Roswell residents like to speak on the item, particularly in reference to an audit? Come on up, Courtney.
A couple of places on the website where you can find financial information. There's the budget information page, and then I think under the subpage where your information for your department is. Do you know if the information, the presentation will be posted under the budget information or under the financial department subpage?
Yeah. So we will post, so the budget workshop, I believe, is already posted on the budget page. And then the budget presentation and the budget book will both be posted on the budget page after the meeting tonight. My deck, Mr. Van Wyck's deck, as well as the audited financial statements will be posted under the financial reports page,
Tonight.
which can be found under the finance tab.
After the meeting's over?
After the meeting's over, sir, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for your question, Courtney. Yes, ma'am. Please come up and Welcome.
Some of the confusion might be, it is on the financial updates and reports, but it's listed as December 31st, 2025. And then when you click on it, it's the December 31st, 2024.
Yeah, we'll get that cleared
Yeah,
up.
okay. That might be some of the confusion.
No, we'll get it.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Any other comments or thoughts from Roswell residents? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Let me turn it back over to council. Council thoughts, comments, or questions on the presentation of the 6-month annual comprehensive financial report and audit. Councilmember Sells.
You want to go first, Christine?
Christine, do you want to go first? Sure. Okay, Councilmember Sells. Councilmember Hall, sorry.
Thank you. I just basically wanted to give a big thank you to the entire finance team, to CKH, to Bill. CKH came in 3 years ago, taking over this account after we had not had a serious look for 19 years. And that was just unfathomable to me that this organization went down that path. But I know there's been some challenges with, as we upgrade our finance department, upgrade the skills, upgrade the talent that we have, and I'm just so excited that you've been our partner along the way and helped guide us and got us to this fantastic place where we are now, and we're going to continue to improve, and thank you very much for everybody's hard work.
Christine, I don't want to miss what you said. Are you suggesting that the current elected body and senior leadership team brought in a new auditing team to improve its auditing processes and review? And that happened in the last couple of years? Is that what you're telling me?
That is correct.
And when did that happen? I just don't want to get lost on the record there.
I believe it was 2022.
So it was just kind of part of your financial oversight and improving the financial
We
oversight.
were engaged in 22 and started 23.
It was the June 2023 period was the first audit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
engaged in RFP process prior to that, which covered part of 22. So this is actually their third audit, full year 23, full year 24, 6 months 24.
Okay. Yeah, I had 3 in there, but
3 audits.
And we get to do a full audit of 2025 here soon enough, right?
Yes, we've already started planning for the 2025 audit.
Outstanding. Thank you. Councilman, thank you, Councilmember Hall. Councilmember Sells.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, guys, for the hard work. In a galaxy far, far away and a long, long time ago, I actually share your designation as a CPA, and that simply means that we're not much fun at cocktail parties, so.
Amen to that.
But anyway, listen, and so it's been a long time, obviously, since I've done what you do, but I do have some questions and I want to drill into them. And I'd like to begin really focusing on the economic presentation, which was more you. I think, is it fair to say that your focus on your presentation was around the controls, procedures, and that kind of stuff? So I'd like to sort of save those and let's talk. I'd like to ask you, Ian, first, if I can call you Ian. Is it Van Wyck or Van Wyck?
Van Wyck, actually, but
how about Ian?
Van Wyck works.
All right. Or how about Ian? Does that work?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have been in this business for, this isn't your first rodeo, let's just put it that way. And so looking at the financials and the ratios that we have with respect to our coverage ratios and our required reserves, is the city in any danger whatsoever of illiquidity for the 12 months ahead, forward-looking, a going concern, opinion, or anything like that? Can you speak to that briefly?
So based on the audit that we performed, we have not come across any reason to believe otherwise.
Okay, and did you see anything that would make you perhaps worry about our AAA bond rating?
Not at this time, sir.
Okay, thank you. If I could go to your slide 6, which is the one where you talk about the risk factors. And you did a good job of explaining these, but and obviously if I remember correctly, this whole process of these risk analyses is to determine the level at which you're going to do your substantive test work, correct? So you're looking for reliance on the controls as a modifier to the amount of substantive testing. Is that the nature of these kinds of things?
Yeah, so effectively, we have a responsibility to audit all material items on the balance sheet. It's just the level of rigor that we apply to these areas here, which we know are the ones that are potentially more likely to have error or fraud attached to them. But that doesn't mean we don't look at the other balances.
Sure,
too.
of course,
Yeah.
right. And let's just sort of take one at a time. Management override of controls, you're looking to see that transactions were unduly influenced either by the electeds or the leadership of the city, that you're looking for evidence of that. Is that what that's about?
Well, yes. So we basically go and look and see that processes are followed, that there is segregation of duties, that there's formal approval of transactions, and within the bounds of the cities, it's the budget that typically needs to be followed. And if the budget procedures are followed and everything is approved, then typically council is doing a good job of setting the right tone at the top.
Okay, and you, at the bottom you say that you found no instances whatsoever of management intervention in Roswell's financial records in your test work. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you. And then the second, I called it padding of revenues. And so you reached out to the sources of revenues to see that the timing was correct. Can you talk a little bit more about improper revenue recognition in a city where we don't have a profit motive, but there are other reasons that might be mistreated?
So it's exactly right that typically with the city you would be more concerned with the recognition of the expenditure, whereas in government also you need to be concerned about the fact that maybe there was revenues that wasn't recognized. So you do want to make sure that you have completeness of the revenue. In this particular case, just due to the sensitivity of the 6-month period, we had to make sure that the revenue is in fact recognized in the correct period, which is why there was that specific emphasis on property tax income.
Right, those are cut-off adjustments. I'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. And then the last one, you know, there has been assertions, I suppose, that fund balances were moved into the general fund to cover losses or anything like that. And I think this improper use of restricted resources gets specifically to that issue. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And so you're looking for any intercompany, or excuse me, interfund transactions, and all of those are scheduled out to your satisfaction, and you feel like you have a complete history of the intercompany or the interfund transactions at your disposal, either through the technical audit work or through the substantive work?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And once again, no improper shifting of funds between restricted or unrestricted was found in any of the work that you did?
None whatsoever.
Okay, perfect. And then if you could go down to 2 more slides, 8 and 9. You go through here and you talk about these controls. So these are basically areas of business control, or excuse me, of process control that you focus on, and you're doing test work to find that you can rely on them for the purpose of the audit. So did you find any material weakness in any of these areas? I don't see, unlike the first one where you had that you did not find any cause for concern, or you didn't find any exceptions. Is this covered in the general, I think in your letter? Is this sort of covered in your letter?
So it's in the financial statements, you will notice that there's 3 different audit reports. So the first audit report is where we say that the numbers are not materially misstated. And then the second one is about the internal controls. And then the third one is about compliance and the federal expenditure. And you will notice in there that we have not raised any material weaknesses.
Perfect, thank you. But you did find, and you do talk about some adjustments that had to be made that, to my reading, it looks like they flow from the change in the year end and the processes sort of lining up with that. And as I looked at them, it looked like they were, you had some short-term, long-term adjustments. You had some cutoff adjustments. And I think the third type was just some accrual, so balance accruals, right? So talk a little bit about how those happened, and did they change the financial statements in any way at the end of the day on the audit opinion?
Yeah, so the majority of these adjustments are typical of what we see when we do a year-end close. There's been a couple of new standards that was implemented last year. We look at the GASB 87 and 96, which is where they brought in the operating lease standards as well as the SABITA standards. That's for subscription-based agreements, and there's accounting that has to be done where you bring in the balance sheet and the liabilities onto the books. The city has a really robust infrastructure. They make use of technology called DebtBook, where they track all their leases and their subscription arrangements. So the adjustments that we had to make was just to make sure that the books align to that software. There was also a payroll adjustment where we had to increase the accrual. Again, it's not indicative of a day-to-day operational flaw. It's just an adjustment that had to be booked at the period end.
Right. And accounting in this particular setting is a very rules-driven thing. You've used the term GASB and previously we talked about GAAP. Can you describe those and what they mean to the average person?
Sure. So in the commercial space, I think most people are aware of what we refer to as US GAAP, which is the framework which allows for consistency among the reporting of different companies and organizations. When it comes to government, we also follow US GAAP principles, but those are also governed by the requirements under GASB, which is the government accounting standards. Those are different somewhat to US GAAP, but it is built under similar framework principles. In the financial statements, we have elements of both the accrual basis and the modified accrual basis. And then when you look at the first couple of pages on the statement of net position, it's actually everything converted into an accrual basis set of financial statements.
This question could be for you or for Bill, I'm not sure, but all of these adjustments, I think you probably, I don't know if you review the interim financial statements at all for purposes of sort of M&A or MD&A kind of questions or anything like that, but they're all on a cash basis as opposed to an accrual basis. Isn't that correct? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, so all the interim. Would any of these adjustments had any impact whatsoever? These year-end adjustments, would they have had any impact on the interim financial statements at all?
No, because we prepare these interim financial statements, particularly your quarterly business reports for quarter 1 and quarter 2. We use the cash basis for those. We generally, because of GASB 34 and some of the other standards that Ian mentioned, to get the books from cash basis to modified accrual basis, we typically don't push those through because they have no meaning against how we're performing against the budget, right? The budget is a spending tool and a collection tool, and we take the results at the end of the year and we kind of rebuild the balance sheet on an accrual basis. So items that might have been collected in a budget period might need to be deferred for GAAP purposes or accelerated, like we may defer it to January for budget purposes, but GASB and GAAP would say, no, you should have recognized it in December. That's a whole closing process, and that's what we have moved from a 6/30 template to a 12/31 template so that we're better prepared in 2025. But as far as what we report out monthly and quarterly, that's not impacted by these entries.
Okay, thank you. Just one sort of capstone question. You know, obviously, the opinion unqualified is what we used to call it. I don't think you call it that anymore, right? It's called, what is it?
Unmodified.
Unmodified, yeah. So a clean opinion, which means that you found no evidence of intentional misstatement of the financial statements, no instances of making up shortfall in one fund by using another fund. If there had been, your opinion would not have been a clean opinion. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I got. Thank you for bearing with me, and I wanted to get through these details. I appreciate it very much.
Councilmember Sells, a series of excellent questions and insights that serve us as an elected body and serve our residents. And thank you, sir, for those outstanding questions. Any other comments, thoughts, or questions from council? Well, Ian, I thank you. I thank you, CKH, for your service to the city. We appreciate your company, and we appreciate what you do for our city and for our residents, and for your great rigor that you bring to it. Bill, outstanding job. Thank you for being our Chief Financial Officer and bringing so much outstanding, really intellectual and experienced discipline to our city's finances. And thank you, financial team, for all the work that you do. We really appreciate it. And obviously that good work shows up in the audit. Thank you so much. There is no vote on this item, so we'll move on to the next item. City Clerk Nancy Long, would you please read the next item on the regular agenda?
Yes, this is presentation of the mayor's FY 2026 proposed budget presented by Adam Novotny, Director of Finance.
Thank you, Nancy. Welcome, Adam.
May I make a comment?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Knighton, please, sir.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the finance team. As Mr. Novotny and Ms. Williams comes forward to present the mayor's 2026 proposed budget, I'll remind the audience and the viewing audience and those in attendance tonight that in keeping with standard practice over the years, public comments will not be received tonight on the proposed budget because it is the first public unveiling of the budget. We'll have a budget presentation on the website tonight, and the full budget document or budget book, which is a 120-page document, will be available by 12 noon tomorrow. And so we encourage everyone to review, analyze, and assess the proposed budget. If you have questions, we certainly encourage you to reach out to Mr. Novotny, Mr. Godshaw, and the finance team. I'll remind everybody again that on October the 1st, there was a full-day budget workshop over at East Roswell Park, and certainly you can review that for departmental presentations. Also, again, as a reminder, on October 20th at 6 o'clock p.m., there will be the first reading of the budget, where public comments will be received, as well as on October 27th, the second reading and adoption. Again, public comments will be received, but we certainly encourage you to reach out to our teams if you have any points of clarity or need information as it's proposed for the FY 2026 budget. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. As always, thank you, sir. Welcome, Adam. So glad you're here. Excited about you presenting the mayor's FY 2026 proposed budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council members, good evening. It's my distinct honor to present the City of Roswell fiscal year 2026 budget. Joined with me, as always, is my partner in good financial stewardship, Glenn Williams. A couple of key dates to note as we cover, and Mr. Knighton did mention a few of these on here as well. On Wednesday, October 1st, we did have the all-day budget workshop, and boy, was it all day. That was also recorded and live streamed, so anyone who had the privilege of tuning into that presentation had a lot of preview of tonight's material. Tonight, of course, is the budget presentation, followed then by the first reading of the budget on the 20th and the second reading of the budget and adoption on the 27th. Some budget highlights. So several things to note before we delve into the numbers on here. We've talked about transitioning to a calendar-aligned fiscal year. Our proposed budget is balanced with no reduction planned in the headcount overall in 2026. I feel as though it's prudent to mention again, the budget is balanced with revenues meeting planned expenses in 2026. The budget is aligned with city goals, and our budget process overall has been data-driven, collaborative across all contributors, followed clearly outlined goals, and completed along an informed and deliberate timeline. Promise I didn't. Just bear with us a moment. It would be my luck, I promise. Then we're in real bad shape.
Yes, we are.
Oh, we just had it for a second. Whatever magic you're doing over there. There we go. Let's see. Let's make sure we're okay. There we go. So the City of Roswell has made deliberate and measurable progress toward fulfilling its vision of becoming the #1 family community in America. Guided by this vision, the city has prioritized infrastructure, safety, livability, and public trust, translating intrepid goals into real outcomes that improve the quality of life for all residents. Best-in-class safety for our residents, businesses, visitors, and our employees, ensuring our fire, police, and emergency services are well-staffed, well-equipped, and nationally recognized. Service excellence, safe, clean, reliable, responsive, providing services that are modern, dependable, and easy to access. Economic development, transformational, purposeful, intentional, revitalizing corridors, attracting new jobs, and shaping a sustainable, business-friendly future. Infrastructure investment, investing, developing, maintaining, delivering high-impact projects that improve mobility, utility systems, and public spaces. Stewarding with integrity, effective stewardship of city resources, managing taxpayer funds with transparency, discipline, and long-term thinking. And a top place to work, valuing our people and supporting their growth, investing in our people, systems, culture, and leadership to build a high-performing workforce. A couple of notes on here, and this was covered in the budget workshop on the 1st. Some highlights of 2025 and priorities outlined in 2026. Streamlining planning processes, improve project management discipline, enhance service delivery, and strengthen and align internal support services. Some highlights on here. It's my presentation, so I get to cover finance, but we're undergoing some financial transformation in our department that was highlighted earlier. Also engaging other departments cross-functionally around strategies for fleet strategy, strengthening our analytical and decision support services, and a whole variety of different things that are aspirational in 2026 with a clear roadmap to achieve those. In the 2026 budget, we're again making investments in public safety. We're making our police pay the highest starting wage and leaving the department fully staffed, along with being well-funded, well-trained, well-equipped, and well-led. We're also continuing Roswell's dedication to the realization of a full-time fire department by strategically adding personnel in 2026. Chief Conroy and Chief Troche would not let me get away without speaking to some public safety metrics that we have on here. The city of Roswell's crime rate has been on an overall steady downward trend, and it's at its lowest level in 20 years. The hope is to continue this trajectory into next year. Fire has enhanced service efficiency in achieving a 38-second reduction in average response time, directly improving incident outcomes. This leads to earlier intervention, increased survivability, and reduced property loss. Investing in public safety is part of the inherent compact residents have with their city, and Roswell is a leader to that end. I did also want to highlight the millage rate for operations remains steady. This information was covered extensively at the millage rate presentation previously, but I do want to highlight a couple of things. In 2022, under this mayor and council, the total millage rate was the lowest since tax year 1987. In 23, 24, and 25 have the lowest operating millage since 2007 and include the voter-approved bond debt in the green. Additional highlights include that the 2026 budget maintains the mayor and council's vision for economic development. It also streamlines services for Roswell residents and businesses. And I'd be remiss not to mention some important activities in the Department of Finance. We're standing up a team of business and performance analysts to work across the city enterprise, engaging in comprehensive data analyses, process improvements, performance enhancements, to name a few. Expect continued development in our budget and fiscal reporting, including departmental shaping of budgets with a greater reliance on key performance indicators and data to inform decisions. The 2026 budget also has a bold agenda to make capital investments to the tune of $21.5 million. They include a variety of activities noted here, specifically road resurfacing in the amount of $4 million, $400,000 going toward traffic calming, City Hall roof replacement of $7 million, the Green Street Mobility Project of $3 million, revitalization and construction on sharpshooters to the tune of just over $1.5 million, Parking deck, construction, administration services, and contingency of $1.2 million. Tourism development and historic activation just shy of $1 million, and other capital improvements of $4.2 million overall. There we go. As we look across at all the various funds in the city, the top 3 revenues are charges for service, sales tax, and property tax. The general fund specific numbers will be later in this presentation, but this is a combination of all funds across the city enterprise that are important to note overall. With 2026 proposed budget being $233 million, up slightly from the forecast in 2025. And this slide represents the proposed budget across all funds on the expense side, or the use of funds. Salaries and benefits obviously being a huge contributor to that end for a city of our size, along with operating, transfer, capital, and others. Relatively flat across the 2025 projected into the 2026 proposed. So the proposed expense budget total of all funds is just shy of $230 million, combined across the general fund, T-SPLOS projects, solid waste fund, group health insurance, public facility authority, participant recreation fund, capital projects, IT, and 15 other various funds that we have across the city enterprise. This is the comprehensive list of the capital items, some of which I've already kind of referenced on here, spread across what projects they are or what various initiatives they represent, and the funding streams across the top in the columns noted. The general fund components being, of course, the citywide resurfacing, traffic calming, update to the unified code, full-time transition for the firefighters. This includes their PPE equipment and the dredging assistance program. A lot of the other activities that are listed below come from funding mechanisms such as the PFA, impact fees, T-SPLOS 2, and hotel motel. Again, totaling that just shy of $21.5 million. So this chart represents the general fund and some pretty simple math that we've put together on here. So how we arrive at the capital available in the general fund that's carved out in the previous slides. So we start with a fund balance of $28.5 million. We subtract out our reserve required that we had that Bill referenced earlier in his presentation, leaving us with a net balance of $2.7 million. We combine that with the general fund revenue that we anticipate in 2026 across the variety of activities, and our operating expense planned in 2026 leaves us with the capital available of $4.3 million. This slide represents the various sources of revenue in the general fund, with 2025 approved in the right column, the projected year end as of 9/10 in the middle, and the 2026 recommended on the far left. The property tax, you'll notice, and we kind of talked through this a little bit internally as to how we arrived at that property tax number in 2026 recommended. The vehicle sales tax, or ad valorem, is baked into that property tax number and not in sales tax. And we anticipate that activity will cool slightly in 2026. 2025, that number was buoyed up with vehicle sales overall. And if you've read any economic indicators and fear of tariffs still kind of lingering out there, we don't anticipate that buoying it quite so much into 2026. But we have made a comprehensive top to bottom review on every line item of revenue that the city receives and made some really good forecasting around those activities to arrive at that dollar total. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, these are our general fund expenses. So these are teased out from kind of that comprehensive list of all the funds combined. This excludes any capital and one-time expenses in 2025 for sake of easy comparison across the years. The forecast includes any budget appropriations of prior year revenues. Again, no planned headcount reduction in any of these budgetary numbers, plus the strategic addition of year 4 of our firefighters transitioning into the full-time fire department, and then the police pay that we kind of touched on a little bit at the budget workshop as well. So those are the numbers that kind of drive up our salary and benefits anticipated in 2026. There was a lot of work that went into driving those numbers downward in terms of solving for our health insurance, for example, was a really, really big one that we spent a lot of time and energy around, and special thanks to Lynn on all of her work. One of the beauties about us being self-insured is we have reliable data and we don't have to rely upon the insurance industry, God bless them, to give us recommendations on that. So we were able to solve pretty much $1 million bogey on that particular one as well. So big kudos to a lot of work that went into that. Again, this is the general fund portion of the capital list, including the general fund share of the $4 million toward citywide resurfacing, the traffic calming initiatives, the UDC update, the full-time PPE for the additional firefighters we're gaining, and the dredging assistance program. So we start to get into the total by service within the general fund activities. Public safety comprises roughly 47% of the general fund. Community services, including rec and parks, infrastructure, including transportation, and then other, which includes PPI, finance, legal, administration, and all the other departments in that. This is a total we would expect to see at a city of our size, with public safety comprising the lion's share of a lot of our planned expense. So we also highlight some other funds that we have within our budget book. A lot of this information is detailed in the budget book that will be presented. This is very high level. Otherwise, we'd be here for about 3 days going line item by line item, which I wouldn't mind, but I think you all might. On here, we have the water and sewer fund. This includes a 5% increase already approved for the water rates based on a rate study. That increase is effective in July of 2025. The rate study was completed in 2023. In fiscal year 2024, the city approved the rates for 5 years. And I don't know if they're noted on there, but it's 10% July 2023, 7% July 2024, 7% July 2025, 6% July 2026, and 6% July 2027, comprising kind of that fee structure and schedule for the next few years and the last few years. Our stormwater fund, the last 2 increases were 10% on July 1st of 2023 and 10% on July 1st of 2024, and I don't believe there's any baked-in change into those numbers. Source of funds obviously are charges for service and our other revenues in there. And then the chart on the right you'll see is kind of a similar theme that we have throughout here between basically personnel and other operating with capital transfers and other. Solid waste fund, the last 2 increases again were 10% on 2023 and 10% in July of 2024. Solid waste is expanding services and added new charges to the transfer station in 2025. So that's some of that ingenuity that we talk about throughout the budget process in finding new ways of collecting some revenue, much needed, might I add as well. So there are the charges in the transfer station. 2 vendors are using our transfer station presently, and residents can bring trash and construction debris, some construction debris, and there's no change planned in that in the 2026 budget. This is the Recreation Participation Fund. As you can see, the use of funds meet the source of funds, with charges for services comprising the lion's share of the inflows, with some miscellaneous revenues in there, including some supplementary funding from the general fund itself. And then in the operating salaries and benefits, again, being the lion's share of those expenses planned into the Recreation Participation Fund. We talked about capital within the general fund itself, so it's important to note some highlighted capital from some of the other funds. The 3 trucks with a front loader, side loader, and dumpster delivery, transfer station paving, and we talked a little bit about transfer station already, recycling center, semi-trailer replacement in the stormwater fund, stormwater master project list, large equipment replacement, and then the water fund, water line replacements, new water tank, which is in the concept phase, the valve at Woodstock water tank construction, and then the leak event detection system. I'm sure those are all fascinating things that Brian Watson gets excited about, but I don't know much about them. And then in the hotel motel fund, which was referenced earlier as a source of funding for some of the capital, 43.75% of revenue is restricted to tourism. So that's Visit Roswell is our designated CVB. And then 37.5 is unrestricted and transferred to the general fund, which includes any funding or interest not transferred in a prior year. 18.75% is tourism product development, and the capital amount of roughly $979,000 is roughly 2.5 to 3 years worth of revenue. Payment to Visit Roswell will be 43.75% of hotel motel revenue, estimated around $779,000. Other partner organizations budgeted $279,000 for Roswell Inc. and $75,000 for Roswell Historic Society, and that maintains level funding from 2025. Next steps, finally, our next steps in the process. We'll have a PDF available on the website, it sounds like tonight, which would be great. We'll also have a hard copy available for folks that want to pop by and visit us in the finance department during regular business hours here. And then as we move past tonight, we look forward to the first reading on the 20th and the second reading and passage of the budget on the 27th. And I thank you very much for your time and attention, and I'm open to any questions.
Adam, thank you so much. I'm just so tickled you're a part of this process. Great job again, finance and budget team. Bill, to your team. Adam, to your team. As the presenting, I suppose, the mayor's budget. I think I'm very proud of the process and the discipline that the city brings to it. And I think there's an incredible amount of hard work from all the operators and operations throughout the city, and you guys do a great job of putting it together. I'm just so impressive. I think a lot of cities could learn from the processes that we use, and they'd be better off in terms of their financial austerity. Any thoughts, comments, or questions from council on this presentation tonight? Very good. Councilor Sells, none? I saw the eye waking there. I saw the eye there.
My only statement would be, if you have time, go watch the day. It was a very good day. You guys did a great job laying all this stuff out. A lot of back and forth. So let's just point to that. It's what is it? Probably 6 hours of compelling television, if you're so inclined.
Well, it is for me. Because this is months for us, right? And the rigor that we bring to it, I think, is really pretty impressive. And I think, as I said, Adam, you coming from Indianapolis, knowing the pretty good system there, and I think you've been impressed with what we do here in Roswell.
I will say, Mr. Mayor, if I may, that this is the busiest place I've ever worked in my entire life. And had I known that coming into it, I'd still would have come. And you bring up a lot of points that those dates that we covered previously don't even begin to encompass the amount of work that Lynn and team have done, all the departments have done, and as much to mayor and council, we owe them our collective thanks.
Yeah, this is the presentation, so you and I can share this for a minute, and we'll let everybody go. We'll be merciful here in a minute. But you and I are big proponents of zero-based budgeting and versus incremental budgeting. It doesn't really mean a lot to a lot of people, but most governments are in the business of incremental budgeting. Zero-based budgeting is a whole different process, and there's a real accountability there that matters to how you come up with the dollars and how you expend the dollars and how you prioritize the dollars. You just want to spend just like 30 seconds talking about that?
Sure. So zero-based budgeting essentially starts with a list of priorities versus data that you go off of. So back when I worked for the state of Indiana, a lot of our budgetary instructions were your base budget was your prior year appropriations or your last completed fiscal year's expenses. And there was a budget reserve that was built into those numbers. You were automatically at a detriment and automatically decreasing over the years. So any requests that you had above that required this whole change package to do that. That made it substantially easier on the operators when you have $30 5,000 state employees and a lot of different agencies, and ours being one of the larger at the State Department of Health. It made budgeting a lot easier, and it made it a lot easier on the departments, but there wasn't that comprehensive justification of every line item, every dollar that we went through. And the departments went through down to the object level, or in other industries they might call the account level, as to what their planned expense was compared to what their prior, and how they arrived at that number, which I'm sure wasn't a fun process for everyone, but definitely necessary for us to arrive at the place that we are now, and a lot of time and energy went into that.
Yeah, the city of Roswell does something that most businesses don't do. Like, it's for real.
Yeah,
the process, it originates at zero. You've got to justify your dollars. You got to explain your dollars. You got to forecast your dollars. You got to know your dollars, and you got to be able to clearly defend your dollars.
Correct. And to all my Hoosier friends potentially watching at home, I'm not making fun of Indiana's budget process at all. I'm just saying ours is better.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And thank you for being a big part of joining the team.
Thank you.
Thank you for the budget presentation this year. Yes, Councilmember Hall. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
This is for the public. Going from the way the budgeting had been done, incremental budgeting, and I was part of council then, this is just a huge paradigm shift to be able to, and a huge lift to do this. I don't know that, I really want the public to understand what a big job this is and what an accomplishment by this mayor and my colleagues to go to zero-based budgeting from the traditional type of budgeting that's been done. And thank you for speaking to that. And Lynn, oh my gosh, thank you for all your work and the entire team. And it's because of this and the priorities that we set that we're able to fund a full-time fire department, to have a plan to do that over 5 years, to fully staff the police department. That's why we're able to do these things, because of the financial stewardship that we're doing, starting with the budget and the priorities. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Christine, it's really exactly. A lot of times in change management, you have some dynamo buffalo walk in and start cutting, right? Hey, I'm gonna cut the budget 10%. I'm gonna cut it 20%, and just let the chips fall where they may. This is a much more difficult process. It takes a lot more acumen, takes a lot more experience, takes a lot more knowing what you're doing to actually manage a budget process with a level of sophistication where you continue, as Christine just pointed out, we're in this, if you think about it, we're in the process of adding $5.8 million of going from a part-time to a full-time fire department, $5.8 million per year to the budget without raising taxes. We've gone from basically from $1 million a year to maybe $1.5 million to, for example, to $3.25 million, just for example, on paving, to $3.25 million to $4 million, without raising taxes. On and on and on it goes. And that is from a great discipline and rigor of understanding where you can continue to find efficiencies, which is really what I think people want, right? But continuing to deliver more services. And it starts with having a great budget team, and great operations team who really puts it together. So thank you, operations, all of you. I do a lot of work. I know you all hate me, but I love you. Thank you. Thank you, Adam and Bill and team, Lynn, for putting this together. I'm really proud of this budget, and I look forward to presenting it to the council tonight, as we've done, and then for our public to see it, our residents to see it. And the first reading will be next Monday at 6 o'clock. And please look at the budget. It'll be online tonight, or tomorrow, 12 o'clock. The budget, the 120-page budget, will be online for you to go through and parse through it. We'll be here for any questions that you might have. Adam, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. All right, let's see. Bear with me, Nancy. Get so excited about the budget, I can't help myself. All right, Nancy, I think we're going to item 4. Would the city clerk, Nancy Long, would you please read the next item, which I think is item 4 on the regular agenda?
That's correct, Mayor. This is approval to advance the Slow Down in Roswell Initiative Traffic Calming Policy presented by Greg Nicholas, Interim Director of Transportation.
Thanks, Nancy. Welcome, Greg.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Excited to be here to talk about advancing the Slow Down in Roswell program. All right, so this program was part of the Mayor's Initiative Top Priorities for 2025. The goals of the program are to improve the quality of life, make streets safer, particularly for pedestrians, and to slow down traffic on local roads under city control. And to do this, we want to do a phased approach. Phase one being the neighborhood traffic calming matrix and pilot program that we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. And then phase two, the local road traffic calming matrix and the sidewalk matrix evaluation that we want to look at in 2026. And I'll touch base on those kind of towards the end here. So the neighborhood traffic calming matrix, this is something we've been developing throughout 2025. We've basically come up with 5 factors that are weighted, and all those, when you calculate all those, the map on the right, the darker blue kind of represents the higher score, which means more problems. So I'll just run real quick through the factors. Speeding, that's the #1 factor at 40%. And you can see the points possible there. I won't go through each of the points. And then traffic volume, that is at 30%. And just a quick note that the speed and traffic data are, they came from the street light data that we have. And then sidewalks is 20%, and then amenities 5%, and then the poverty rates at 5% as well. So like I said, when you run all the numbers, we came up with about 11 neighborhoods that rank towards the top. These are Transportation's proposed kind of a pilot program to look at these 11 neighborhoods in 2026. And I'll kind of step through the process, how we want to do that. So step one, we want to do data collection and temporary installation evaluation. So what we want to do, evaluate the main roads within the neighborhoods, and then go out and actually collect the data, and then evaluate what temporary features we want to install and where we want to install them. Just a quick example, this is just a snapshot on the east side of the 3 neighborhoods. Where we're gonna, the white lines are kind of identifying the main roads within the neighborhoods. So that's where we envision, really focusing on the data collection and then the implementation of the temporary features. So step 2, so we want to do the temporary installation with speed tables, speed cushions, delineators, and then we want to come back and do data collection as well for 30 to 60 days once those features are installed to ensure the placement's correct and that we actually are seeing a decrease in speeds in the area that we want to calm the traffic. And then ultimately with step 3, we want to do the evaluation for the permanent features and identify those and get those installed where feasible. So what are the next steps? So for the traffic calming pilot program, we want to look at the 11 neighborhoods. As you just saw in Adam's presentation, we do we're requesting $400,000 for traffic calming devices such as speed cushions, speed tables, speed feedback signs as part of our pilot program for next year. We are also requesting money in the 2026 budget for a traffic analyst position that'll help with the field work and the data collection and that analysis. And then we also have a pretty comprehensive public outreach campaign. We were just here at Youth Day a couple weeks ago, handing out lots of our new Slow Down in Roswell swag, and kids were very happy for all the little treats that they got. And then, as I mentioned, phase 2 and phase 3 that we want to work on in 2026. The traffic calming matrix, that's going to look at local roads that are not within subdivisions and not on the state routes, and that's just going to be in-house preparation, probably using similar data like streetlight data to do that analysis. And then we also want to look at neighborhood sidewalks and develop a matrix for that. Because right now, our sidewalk matrix is pretty much on, we call them collector and distributor roads, so more of the higher speed roads and not within the neighborhood. So we're going to look at that and develop that and look at the needs within the neighborhoods. So tonight we're asking for approval of the traffic calming matrix with the data we showed, and then just to consider the 2026 budget request. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Greg, great job. I'm very excited about this, and I know I'm going to turn it over to Nancy in a second, but David Johnson, you've got to feel tremendous gratification to see this. This is one of the reasons you ran for office 2 years ago, and here it is within 2 years. You're seeing the fruition of your aspirations and dreams as a resident and then becoming an elected official, and you're seeing it coming like now before your colleagues as a reality of actually changing how things happen in the city of Roswell. I'll give you a minute to talk about that before we go to court. All right, well, you're good. Well, I know you got to be super proud of you. I'm proud of you, man. I'm just amazing.
I'm still trying to recover from Alan's questions to the auditors. So.
Don't worry about those. Sorry. Nobody's going to recover from those.
I don't know if it's poetry or questions. That's very
It's poetry to me, baby. I loved it, Alan. City Clerk Nancy Long, do we have Roswell residents who'd like to speak on this item?
Mayor, there are no comments for this
Oh, here we go.
item.
Thank you, Nancy. Yes, Janet. Oh, come on. Yes, ma'am. Janet, come on. 100%. That's okay. We're happy to have you. Welcome, Janet.
Janet Russell, Roswell resident. I was at the committee meeting last week when you brought up the subject of Slow Down Roswell. I think the concept is a really good one. However, I think your analysis to create the matrix is flawed. You went and picked out neighborhoods, and coincidentally, almost all of them have a name. They're all little nice subdivisions. They're country clubs. They are areas, very nice. One of you even at the meeting said, I must have 1,800 cars a day going down my street. Well, you live in a subdivision with 900 homes. Assume every home has at least 2 cars. They're your neighbors. I remind people you are not sitting in traffic, you are traffic. What you failed to examine when you did this study, or whatever, this fake study, as I say it, you've already predetermined where you want to put these things to give it a try. Now, I appreciate slowing down. However, you ignored the very area that was conceived and built before subdivisions existed, which is the central corridor of this town. We're sitting in the middle of it. Not one mention was made, except at the very end where he says neighborhoods not in subdivisions. Norcross Street's the perfect example. From the roundabout to the crosswalk at Variant, there is not another crosswalk. From the roundabout all the way up to Holcomb Bridge toward Olive Garden, there is not another crosswalk. Why? Those people don't care, they don't mind. They don't have a voice, they don't have an HOA, they don't have a mouth, they don't have a bullhorn. They're just living their lives, contributing to what makes Roswell a real place, not a pretend place. I see you want to spend $400,000 to implement these pretend little things. But I've sat here for years listening to the people of King Street, which is next to Barrington Hall, begging for traffic calming because people use trucks to cut through from 9 to 120 so they don't have to stop at the light. And they were told if they wanted speed bumps, they'd have to pay for them themselves. Yes, indeed. A neighborhood that was built in the 50s. But they're told, too bad, you want them, you pay for them. But now we're going to pay for them in other places. As a taxpayer, that doesn't make me really, really happy. It's no coincidence that right here on the corner, across the street from the library, is a hawk light crossing. I thought that was the funniest thing I ever saw when they put it in, to enable people who park at the library to walk to Canton Street. Hello, there's a sidewalk on this side of it, with a traffic light at the corner of Highway 9 and Norcross Street. That was to get people to go to Variant Brewery. It had nothing to do with Canton Street. Either that or somebody doesn't understand how people walk. It's the same up the hill. Why would you go to the other side when you're on this side? I don't like it that certain neighborhoods have gotten priority because they have a name. Maybe private tennis, private swimming, private golf, private lake. There's a whole bunch of neighborhoods, thousands of people who live right off I use Norcross Street. Now, just to let you know, in Europe, they have implemented in many cities this. Any two-lane road, get that, any two-lane road is now limited to 30 kilometers an hour. No questions asked. That's 18 miles an hour. I think we should do it for 20. 20 miles an hour, whether it's your subdivision mayor, or where you live, Christine, or where you live, Sarah. Think about the two-lane streets. Woodstock, Norcross, Azalea, Pine Grove. Those are just a few to name. You don't want to drive 20 miles an hour? Find another way home. Because all those people that are flying through here are going to Cobb County and Cherokee. So you don't want to get tough cookies. Find another way home. But you know that when you enter a two-lane road in this town from now on, 20 is plenty. Slow down and smell the flowers. How about there's more to life than picking up speed?
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Thank you for your comments very much. All right. I think that was it for Roswell residents, I believe. Thank you, Ms. Russell. I appreciate your comments very much. And I am now going to turn it back over to council. Councilmember Sarah Beeson.
Appreciate the comments. We've received that feedback several times, not only here in person, via email, and then also via social media, of making it standard for 20 miles per hour throughout the entire city. Copyright Janet Russell. So absolutely. So I'll respond to you, at least on behalf of myself, not necessarily on behalf of council. While we would love to be able to adjust speed limits throughout the city, I live off of a road which is used as a common drag racing corridor. And as you drive down the road in front of Sweet Apple Elementary, you can see that the miles per hour changes signs. So you'll be going, it says 45 in white, then it says 35 in yellow, then it says 45 in white. Anywhere you see a white miles per hour speed limit sign, we have no ability to arbitrarily be able to change those speed limits. It's GDOT that controls it. And unfortunately, GDOT uses their book, which uses guidance based off of traffic counts and numbers and throughputs on roads. If we were to change those signs, it means that we wouldn't be able to enforce speeds on those roads through the police department. So we want to make sure that we can enforce speed limits as they are stated. Would love to lower them and be able to enforce them otherwise. And keep in mind too that Slow Down in Roswell, at least as we're launching it, it's a pilot program. So being able to implement it in areas where we're able to coordinate with subdivisions, which I realize I get the bias in it, but it's just the initial launch. If it doesn't work out, it's not something that necessarily needs to proceed forward, and we can just go back to our standard residential traffic calming. But it's, I think, at least a worthwhile effort for us to try to see if this is successful. I think Councilmember Johnson had something too.
Thank you, Councilmember Beeson. Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah. Hey, Greg, can you go back to the slide that shows the list of roads, neighborhoods? That one. So Barrington Farms is not a country club neighborhood. Wave Tree Drive, we've actually already applied for a federal grant to traffic calming because we know how bad it is. A resident has sent us a car flying on Wave Tree, like literally flying. Liberty Square is not a country club neighborhood. Spring Ridge is not as either. Wexford's not as either. The reason why we chose these neighborhoods is because it's the ones that we had the best data for. And as a healthcare professional, I don't like doing things without data. I don't think you want me doing anesthesia without data, how the drugs work, or how things like that work, which is why we go through years of training. And that's what this was. This was years of training of getting the data of what we needed to see what neighborhoods we could attack, to see what policies we can implement that can work. And now that we have this and we're going through this, we will go and look at Thompson Place. We will go look at Norcross Street. We will go look at Jones Road. We will go look at Howes Way and many other streets in this city, because it is my ultimate goal while I sit in this chair that no pedestrian dies in this city. is my ultimate goal, which is, this is a really lofty goal and probably will never happen, that no cars ever get in a car accident in this city, right? That people, oh, sorry, it's the echo. I don't think people should be able to walk in their neighborhood and be feared of being hit by a car. That's it. That's why I'm here. That's why I was elected 2 years ago. And I hope to spend the next 4 years working on this plan. And I appreciate Greg, Caitlin, Sharon, which, by the way, Sharon, I stole your Slow Down Roswell bag and gave it to the kids for the veterans. So you got to get a new one. And on Youth Day Parade, I mean, we were running out of stuff.
Janet, nobody interrupted you when you were talking. We are all hearing it. Janet, everybody gave you the courtesy to listen to you uninterrupted. I'm going to ask the same courtesy from you. When someone's talking, that we listen to them and don't interrupt them. Would that be fair? No, ma'am, you've got your 5 minutes of time. He's making his statements. Would you allow him to do that without interrupting?
Mr. Russell, I'm really sorry that previous mayors and councils did not actually care about cars flying in the city, right? They didn't care, because I know they didn't care, because I was sitting in this. I sat in these pews for 14, 15 years I lived in this city. And I know you lived here for, thank you. I am sorry that they did not care about the residents of this city walking in their neighborhoods, or walking on Norcross Street, or walking on Thompson Place. I do. This is a pilot program, and we're going to slow down the cars in the city. And I am talking to state senators so that we can have better control of our speed limits in this city, because I'm really tired of driving down resident roads where they should be 35 miles an hour or 15 miles an hour. We can't even enforce speed. I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but I'm going to. We can't enforce speed in my neighborhood. We can't use a radar in my neighborhood for the police to do it, except on one little category. And in the one category that they were at, Don Stevens was sitting with a police officer. Hey, Don, sorry, I'm going to tell your story. In my neighborhood, and within 5 minutes, caught a car going 50 miles an hour, a landscaping truck going 50 miles an hour down my road, right? And that shouldn't happen in any neighborhood in this city. And that's why I'm here, and that's why we're implementing this program. That's why we're spending tax dollars to do it. And it shouldn't happen on your street. It shouldn't happen on my street. It shouldn't happen on your street. It shouldn't happen on Sarah Street, Will Street, Christine Street, or any other Roswell resident that lives here, all right? So I'm sorry for 30 years you had a mayor and council who didn't care about the people walking in their neighborhoods. I do. I'm excited to get this done. This is one of the best programs this city will do in the next 15 years, because it's going to save people's lives, and that's why I sit in this seat, and that's why I care.
And it's going to massively improve quality of life. This is going to make people's lives better. It's going to make people to be able to enjoy this great city more. I mean, there's a lot of pieces to this. And Janet, we absolutely agree with you. By the way, I love the 20s plenty. I think it's a really cool idea. There are some practical problems that David kind of alluded to. Love the 20s plenty. I think it's very clever. We're on the same page. And you just heard Sarah mention to it, it's a pilot program. So we've got to go out and demonstrate that we can make it work so we can expand it. That's why this is very disciplined. These 11 here were decided by the Transportation Department. The Transportation Department didn't come to Kurt and say, hey, Kurt, what do you think about these? We're thinking throwing these, and we want to make sure we include yours, and we want to make sure we include David's. No, they went out and said, look, man, speed's number one. Speed's the biggest issue, right? Second biggest issue is the amount of cars. These are, to me, it's like this is data-driven. And so it's a good place. It had no idea, it had no respect to where anybody lived, or whether it's a country club, or whether it's a neighborhood. And this will give us the opportunity to expand the program, because I think you're going to see lots of people are going to say, hey, man, we want this. This is cool. This works. And by the way, we're going to get a lot of opposition on this. A lot of people are going to be very unhappy when they start saying that we're serious about slowing down in the neighborhoods. There's going to be, not everybody's going to be like all gung-ho. I will tell you the thing that I've heard anecdotally the most since I've been mayor, from either people just kind of saying to me, can you slow down our neighborhoods? I hear that more than any other thing since I've been elected mayor. Can you slow it down? Can you slow it down? And so one of the things that was so exciting when David got elected was David was committed to changing the way we went about transport, how we handled sidewalks, how we handled multi-use paths, and the speed at which we traveled, whether it was somebody cutting through our city, and we agree with you, Janet, or whether it's one of us that's driving too fast, and recognizing that the quality of life of a fantastic city is related to how fast we drive in one another's neighborhoods. And this is a pilot program, and I think it's going to be super successful, and I think it's going to be impactful. And we agree with you. I don't think there's a disagreement there. Councilmember Mortland.
Okay. Very quick. This is a pilot program. In your estimation, how long are you going to have the pilot program in existence? And then at what point do you determine, is this a calendar amount of time that you're going to put on this, or is this a data amount of time? Once you meet that data threshold, then we officially move into pilot 2 or phase 2 on to phase 3. Can you touch on that just very quickly?
So our goal is to probably have most of the data and everything collected by July next year, because we want to kind of be ready to go into the the 2027 budget process. I mean, we're meeting this week to talk about starting data collection. So we're going to start data collection this year. Now, once we get the funds for some of the traffic calming elements, some of that may not go in until, as early as January. But we're going to start our data collection, this year and get going.
Okay, so one more time. When do you anticipate pilot 1 to be done?
By July, next year.
July of next year.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Just to be clear, this gets initiated January 1, right, of 2026, and you're going to start collecting. You're going to be putting these measures into place. You're going to be adapting these measures as you see success or lack of success. It's a pilot program, as Sarah just mentioned. And you're going to be collecting data. And in that 6-month process, by July, through the summer, really through May, because that's going to be the vast majority when the traffic is going to be collecting a lot of this just because of school, but you'll also be collected in June and July. Just kind of answer your question. They expect to come back and say, look, success, success, not success. We need to adapt here. This worked, this didn't work. And then and they're going to come a recommendation because they're going to put it in the budget. Because, a little surprise, we start working in budgets in April and May and June and July and August, as the operators would tell you. It's pretty early. And so they need that data to say they'll come back to you next year if it's successful. They're going to come back to the elected body and say, look, we want to expand the Slow Down in Roswell program. And the next year, instead of being $400,000, it'll probably be like $1.5 million or $2 million. And we'll be working in the budget process through all that, because it'll be a big giant number with a lot of everybody else's big giant numbers. And we'll have to figure out, hey, how do we make 1.2 or $1.5 million work in our Slow Down pilot program, which is expanding? Because my sense is lots of people are going to say, I want it in my neighborhood. I want it on my street. I want it on this street. And he's going to take the data to make those decisions to say, hey, rather than, hey, David doesn't make that call, we, as the objective engineering transportation group, are going to use the data to make that call and to expand it. And of course, you'll be putting up with a lot of council members saying, hey, what about mine? What about yours? Hey, Janet's going to be saying, what about mine? But it'll be data driven based upon where we go next. Thank you, Greg. Are there any other thoughts from council? I appreciate your questions very much, Lee. You good? Okay. Thank you very much, Greg. I'm really excited about this. Before you go, though, do I have a motion on approving to advance the Slow Down in Roswell Initiative traffic calming policy?
I think I'll make that motion.
Will you make that motion, please,
Yes.
sir?
This is a motion for approval to advance the Slow Down in Roswell Initiative traffic calming policy.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Sells. All those in favor of approving the motion as made by Councilmember Johnson and seconded by Councilmember Sells, please do so by raising your hands. Let the record show that the vote is unanimous, 6-0, and the Slow Down in Roswell Initiative traffic calming policy moves forward. Thank you very much, and congratulations to everybody.
Thank you.
I'm clapping for it. I don't care if anybody else is. It's a big deal. Thank you. All right. Nancy, would you please read the next item, item number 5, I think it's the last item on the regular agenda.
Yes, Mayor. This is approval of a resolution supporting the Roswell Downtown Development Authority Hill Street project and all documents and approvals necessary for the project. This will be presented by Jeff Leatherman, Deputy City Administrator and Senior Vice President.
Just warning, this is not a quick presentation. If you thought this was going to be 5 minutes, like this one's going to probably be longer than the rest, so I apologize to you in advance. This was going to be 25 minutes, probably, Jeff, right? Yeah. Morning, viewers.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. And with Hill Street, I have a team of presenters lined up behind me. So I'm going to take the first couple of slides. Mr. Sorkoff will follow me, along with Michelle Alexander, covering our overlay requirements. And Assistant City Attorney Joe Cusack will round out our presentation group with the required legal documentation. This has been really years in the making as we have been working on this project. And so the presentation attempts to wrap up a significant amount of work by all parties, not only our consultant team that includes a number that we'll talk about in the middle of the slide deck, but also our staff team. And so as I launch into the first couple of slides, I just wanted to say thank you to the Mayor and Council for giving us as a collective team the opportunity to work on economic development projects. We started out in 2025 laying out our goals for the city of Roswell. And here we are in October talking about those goals with Slowdown in Roswell. With transformational budget and Adam and his team doing a great job. We have a resident and business services facility that's going to be opening up here at the end of the month, and we're just continuing to work the goals that you all have outlined for us as a collective team, and it truly is a team effort that you will see from this presentation tonight. We are excited to be working on transforming the Hill Street development, which is just to the south of where we stand right now. You can see it before me. You see City Hall kind of in the background of this photo. You see the police department building that has since been emptied with the exception of the 911 operators that are still operational in that facility. And that represents the 6 acres of essentially redevelopment opportunity that we have here in the city of Roswell. As we've talked about in July of 2024, we have a number of areas in our city that we are primed for redevelopment. We have our downtown corridor that we've been working on over the course of the last 2 years. We're excited to move into the midtown and uptown corridors and over to the east side. And we've started to make some of those transitions in various projects. Summit that we talked about in the Roswell results presentation from earlier this morning is yet another one of those key moves that we have made, not only from a city services perspective, but also from an economic development perspective in planting our flag in the middle of the city as we work on not only midtown, not only uptown, but also the east side of our community. And our economic development strategy will continue to follow the items that we've outlined. The Downtown Development Group and the Development Authority has been integral in how we've set our vision, and they are here tonight, and Mr. Sorkoff will make some introductions to them. But really, as we think about the downtown area, it centers around a couple of key projects, and this being just one of them. That also includes the Chambray Hotel, the West Alley Hotel, and the West Alley project that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail at the end of the month, along with our Hill Street and Hill Street District. Southern Post is up and running in a vibrant, nearly fully occupied development just down the street from us. And of course, you heard about the Green Street project. Sharon and her team doing a great job of getting the parking deck stood up. That is continuing to move forward with a May 2026 opening target. The crane, actually, as I was walking around City Hall, you can kind of start to see the crane tipping up above the skyline as they continue the work there for the Green Street that is really going to tie all of this together, along with our Founders Park around Town Square, and the continued investment in our historic assets that not only have we prioritized in this budget, but as commented earlier on by Adam, that we continue to prioritize in 2026. Project plan, 75 square feet of commercial retail space, 143 apartments, 510 new parking spaces, and public green space and a promenade. This is the transformation from an earlier 2019 project that was limited to 1.3 acres, and it was only apartments with some mixed use at the bottom floor. That really has been the transition from 2019 and looking at a true mixed-use destination. And Peter will talk about the vision that was cast as we started to build out the vision for this project. Some of the key points in the attachments in the presentation tonight, and I will draw the community's attention to all of the attachments that were included in the Hill Street item in our agenda. There are a significant number of pages, I think roughly about 300 pages worth of attachments that is all of the data that we have put together. I'm going to cover some high-level components of our economic impact report that was done by KB Advisors on behalf of the Downtown Development Authority as well as the City of Roswell. And we looked at it in two components, the direct impact to the City of Roswell and then also the regional impact, mostly in Fulton County, for what this project represents. You also see it broken down from construction and then into operation, the two different really schedules of economic impact in our community. This is the first component that is specific to the City of Roswell as we think about one-time economic impacts. What does the construction of this project bring to our community? And then on the right-hand side, what is the operation of this project bring to our community? Direct impact of 172 jobs during the construction process and 200 jobs specifically to the City of Roswell once we're operational. You also see the output and the spending and the earnings that are projected as part of this project. When you start to expand that lens in our economic impact studies, you start to look at Fulton County and what are the overall impact to jobs, resources, and revenue in our community. This helps to support our schools. It helps to support our county as well as the city operations from a tax basis perspective and a sales tax perspective. All of this data is contained in the attachments that the community can reference as part of our Hill Street report tonight. And then as we start to wrap up, Fulton County impacts at a glance, you can see the impacts to our schools, to Fulton County, as well, again, the jobs supported. This is a tremendous movement in the community, and as you start to think about this is what we can perform on behalf of our community with the right economic development project on 6 acres, as we start to expand our vision to larger projects in Midtown and Uptown and also on the east side, the economic impact of those projects will significantly improve the overall quality of life here in our community. You start to drill down into the one-time economic benefits of the construction cycle, the construction materials, the direct employment, as well as the local sales tax from construction, the permit fees or one-time revenue, as well as total public revenues from construction. This also then transitions into the ongoing impacts of the estimated property tax, both city, county, and schools, the estimated annual sales tax across this project site, direct new jobs, and the direct new payroll spending from operations on site. Again, this is the economic framework that we are working through as we evaluate the large picture of the job or of the project. As we think about the surrounding impacts, often referred to as the halo effect, $173.5 million in additional property tax value, $55 million in additional tax digest, and $1.7 million in new property tax revenue over 10 years to Fulton County schools in the City of Roswell. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sorkoff. He's going to then bring us down to the vision of the project site itself and the direct impact that we can see from this project over the course of the next few years and then also into the future as we work through this exciting project. So, Mr. Sorkoff.
Much, Jeff, and thank you for making the time for us to be able to present this to you today. I know it's a long time in the coming, and I would say thank you not just for the trust you placed in us to be able to track this project down, but also the patience you've shown in allowing us to creatively solve a whole variety of different problems that this project started with, and then just as it matured, the twists that it's taken to arrive at where we are today. So I'll just start, and this is not on screen. I'm going to read this to you. Hopefully this is a very quick way to kind of contextualize the vision that was cast, frankly, by you over a year ago. And there were really 5 pillars that we were trying to achieve in how we recreated this project. One, as was already mentioned, we needed to de-densify the 96 entitled apartments and 7,000 square feet of commercial that was on 1.31 acres. So very, very dense project. I think that probably qualifies as the most dense residential project in North Fulton, had that have moved forward as it was. How do we create basically a multi-use or multi-purpose district, something that's a little bit new to Roswell in terms of how we approached this, and something that as we created it could be also accretive to Canton Street, to Southern Post, to our historic assets that are already downtown, not something that was just going to stand by itself and sort of exist as a singular unit, but something that would actually be productive to the rest of the great developments that are in our downtown. Also, we talked a lot about parking, and Roswell has 71 spaces that it controls in downtown Roswell. Just to give you context to that, and to those people who are following along at home, the city of Alpharetta has about 1,000, and Sandy Springs has roughly 1,100. So we are way, way behind in parking count. So how could we find a way to also use this project to try to bring some parking infrastructure into our downtown? Because we know parking infrastructure is really like plumbing as it relates to finding retail partners and new commercial partners to come in and develop. There was also a lot of talk about how do we create something that's walkable and something that is a district or a development that actually has a place that is safe to linger, place for your kids to be able to run, or if your dog is off a leash, to feel safe in that space, to be able to actually just kind of hang out and not just come downtown, eat, and then frankly have to get in your car and drive away again. And then lastly, was there a way for us to use this project to connect to all of the multimodal trail system that's already been invested in and is continuing to be invested in, to connect our downtown in a walkable way, but through the trail system that's already there. So those were really, frankly, 5 very heady and very large sort of mandates to come into a project that was, the die was already cast with an entitlement of 96 apartments. What we've landed with is complicated, and when Joe comes up to present the legal documents, you'll get a much better feel for that. But in a nutshell, what this required us to do was, first and foremost, a land swap. So the city took the property on the interior of the development and actually swapped it with a developer who owns the entitled property I mentioned, which is on the corner. I'm sure David and Joe will validate or verify this, that it is in fact illegal for a city to swap property where the city does not, or the municipality does not actually come ahead on the value of that swap. There's roughly about an $800,000 gain in that property swap, just in terms of appraised value between those two projects, or those two properties. So that was the first thing that had to happen. The second thing that we knew was going to happen was we needed to create a ground lease. That was a little different, I think, to work through financially, and there was something a bit new to the city of Roswell. But what a ground lease would do is give us predictable revenue over time, which would allow us to basically go about trying to finance this P3 deal with a partner in a way that otherwise just selling the property couldn't and wouldn't have gotten us there. So that was another new thing. That also forced the DDA to be a major contributor and participant in how this deal was going to get done. And so while there was a reference to them earlier, I know that Will Cawley is here, Trent McClure is here, and counsel for the DDA, Alex Kaufman, who's also a Roswell resident, is here. And I cannot overstate how important their role is in this project really coming together, and then frankly how this project will operate after the fact. So they will continue to be involved long term in this project well after it's actually been constructed, leased up, and operational. After that, getting into this P3 and how are all these parts and pieces going to fit together, really sort of translates into a development agreement and a parking lease agreement and a whole variety of other agreements that I'm going to let Joe get into the specificity of those. And then lastly, this required the city to really take a hard look at parking and how we were going to manage parking. And I know that that's a bit of a hot topic, or has been for a while now, but this project essentially, as Jeff said, brings 510 spaces into the downtown, 370 of which are in a parking deck, which will be operated by the city. And so again, this really requires the DDA's involvement in a very, very specific way in the long term in terms of how all of this is going to be managed. So getting it legally put together, getting the deal structure together, those were the massive sort of pillars to pull this together. What does that actually look like at a high level from a finance perspective? And while Jeff covered a lot of the impact, I want to speak a little bit more directly to these components. So one-time payments, as the parking garage goes up, there is actually remnant land. That remnant land is actually identified as 16 brownstone pads. There was an RFP process that was executed. Providence Homes won that RFP and is paying $4 million or $250,000 per pad. That is important because that actually goes into the equity or the cap stack from a sources perspective. It was mentioned earlier, there's a $400,000 public purpose payment, impact fees of $533,383, and another $608,903 in permit fees above the impact fees. So that's $5.54 million coming into the project right from Jump Street. And then the second piece of this, which speaks, I think, a little bit more to what does this look like year over year and what revenue sources are coming in to essentially cover the bond payment, because this is a project that is being funded through revenue bonds and not through general obligation bonds, meaning the core difference in those two bonds being there is no direct impact to the taxpayer, meaning there is not a millage increase to be able to cover the general obligation bonds. I think is a very, very important factor. And again, how this deal was put together, I will let Joe speak to that a little bit more as well. So the ground lease starts at $362,346. That is bought down by the $4 million contribution that goes into those 16 brownstone pads that I mentioned earlier. Without the $4 million, that number is much closer to $700,000, but the $4 million is coming in. Commercial property tax is listed at $20,224. There is contract payments of $273,734. Those contract payments are across 10 years. They actually phase down over 10 years. And essentially the total over 10 years is $1.7 million into the pro forma. And then parking revenues are forecasted as $1,012,000 in 2030. I say 2030, and this is an important clarification. There's a 3-year stabilization period that is essentially put into this project and in the pro forma, which is to say, once the project is constructed, they have to go out and actually lease up the commercial space. The multifamily has to be leased up. And usually it's traditional that you would have a 3-year lease-up period before you get fully optimized or stabilized. So the numbers that I'm showing you here on parking revenue are a reflection of 2030. And we believe that this is really fairly conservative in our approach. This takes into account essentially a 30% absorption rate on the parking that is related to the project, outside of what the multifamily pays, which is starting at $95 a month with a 2.75% escalator on that over time, and the commercial parking, which is at $125 a month to start, also with a 2.75% annual escalator. So those essentially...
Per space.
Per space,
Per
yes.
space.
Yep, thank you. So those are essentially creating the revenue certainty that allows us to then build the pro forma around the total revenue profile for the project. So what does that look like in 2030? I think conservative forecast for that is $1.67 million annually. Again, and when the package goes live, you'll see in the pro forma this has actually been modeled out over 50 years. And that same $362,000 ground lease payment in year one, by the time you get 20 years out, if this developer has not exercised the purchase option, to give you an idea, a year 20, just because it's an easy number to get to, is actually $2 million a year. So that's just compounding at 2.75% escalation annually to give you a sense of what this looks like over time. Okay, I will keep moving. Just a couple key dates that I think are important to be aware of. So actually construction fences went up around the site a little earlier in the week. October 28th is the projected closing where the bonds can be taken to market. December 2025, at this point, we're looking at the first week of December, which is forecasted for the developer to get their construction loan. The only delay in that is they have to have their GMPs to basically guarantee pricing for their construction loan. They have their term sheet, so we feel very good about meeting that timing. And then really, construction commences at the beginning of January. Once all those closings have taken place, demolition will be the first thing that you'll essentially see, and they'll work from the west-east because the police station and the jail and the water tower won't get touched until the 911 team is 100% moved out and the new 911 center is activated. The target date to actually have the project online is November 2025. The developer is clearly financially motivated to, 2027, I'm sorry. They are financially motivated to make that work. Obviously, they have tremendous amount of carry. It is a $120 million project. So we're not going to need to be pushing them along to make this happen. Lastly, I will not go into the brand work, the brand package, because I'm really jumping the gun a little bit. Spoiler alert to the development team. Their press releases will ideally go out tomorrow, and this announcement will be made publicly and through the media. But the brand package for the development, the name is actually Hill Rose Market and the Hill Rose District. So there'll be lots more information on all of that, but it is officially coined as Hill Rose. And you'll see a lot more work like what is on screen right now. And I really have to credit the developer in working with us on a couple things. One, the signage package that I know has been presented and there's a great amount of detail in. We really wanted to pick up some of the design elements that are already on Canton Street and across the rest of the city to say, how do we bring that into this new development? And they have gone way out of their way and frankly, I think spent inordinately at their expense to be able to make the signage package and some of these elements in the branding not just relevant to their project, but relevant to the rest of the great developments that are already downtown so that this feels like it fits and that the next developments that come online will actually be able to borrow from this design package and some of the elements of this to make the next piece fit even more than our pieces that are already in play. More on that later. I think I want to move quickly because I know we're late, but there's been a lot of work that has gone out into the renderings and the design package, which again will also be available for everybody to see. You know, there's some really interesting things in how this was put together. One, just bring your attention to the top left-hand corner. That is Building A, which sits right on Hill Street and on Alpharetta, which, you know, frankly, right now there's a tremendous amount of blight on that corner. And so this is a building that was meant to be a bit of an exemplar to welcome everybody into the development, but also just for that very busy corridor to have some different looking buildings that express that there are really some great vitality and energy and capital that is pouring into this city so that those markets are also saying, hey, if this could happen on Hill Street, maybe we can do something. So the placement of that building, very, very important. The bottom left-hand corner, I spoke to having places specifically drawn out for programming. There is a pedestrian promenade and then this green space that are actually in the center of the development. And that is so we have some other places to do things like Alive in Roswell, which is amazing on Canton Street, but requires a street to be closed down. So we just borrowed a lot of great things that we saw on Canton Street and said, well, hey, if we could put that in the middle of a district and then allow them to go and program those things instead of the city having to do all the programming and take on all this expense of it, could that be self-contained so that we had more places to do great things like that? So that really represents a lot more than a green space. And I think we feel very, very comfortable with this developer and their track record of great programming in their developments well beyond the point of construction. And then I think the bottom right-hand corner, I'll just focus on that one and we'll keep moving. This is also an adaptive use program. So rather than tearing the police station down, which would have frankly been the easy thing to do, we really worked with this developer and their design team to say, how do we take this building and instead of just leveling it, is there a way to make it make sense in the totality of the rest of this development? And again, to their great credit and to ASG Sky's design team, they really found a way to make this building make sense. And then I think what you'll see in the branding package is it is called out and named separately so that it never sort of loses the identity of what its point of origin was, which was a police station. Lastly, and then I'm going to pass this along, Jeff, do you want to just kind of talk about who our vendor partners have been?
Just want to say thank you to all of our vendor partners. It is truly a team effort, and it takes a significant amount of expertise to bring to the table for these individual projects, and the ability to contract out for our legal services, for our consulting services, for our contract management services across the organization is so vital to why we are successful in being able to bring this project forward. You see our partners on the board, Da Vinci providing a tremendous amount of financial analysis, KB on the economic development side, Parker Hudson on the legal side, of course our development partners, and right in the center you have our Downtown Development Authority leveraging their volunteer group to help support the city, and our partners with SEER that continue to move our economic development vision forward, not only providing expertise on the consulting side, but also project management that we're able to expand and retract services as necessary as we continue to work towards the future of economic.
Yeah, I think I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment personally to thank Wes Smith, who is with us, who has done an absolutely extraordinary amount of work on project managing this and frankly helping us to orchestrate it. Marisa Anteloni, who is not here, was our primary financial analyst on this. Just a monumental amount of time building the performa and all the various models that went to making this make sense. So for the two of them in particular, thank you very much. And then lastly, I think this is a Herculean lift for a city. And as we were sort of working through this presentation, talking about who was involved, we were hard pressed to find a single department inside of City Hall that has not in some way been involved in making this happen. From EPW to ComDev and finance, fire, legal, police. I mean, everybody has really been involved in this. And so I think, again, it's really not just a shout out to those of us who spent the most time on it. It is frankly those who came in, had to get spun up or up to speed very quickly, contribute their portion, go back to their very busy jobs and come in and out of the project, which frankly I think is more difficult than actually being in it all the time. So tremendous thank you, Mr. Knighton in particular, for allowing your staff to be as engaged as they were to all of this happen. And thanks to all of them, many of whom are here tonight. So with that, I will pass it to Michelle and she can speak a little more.
Excuse me. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. As Mr. Leatherman mentioned earlier, two of the components that do require Mayor and Council approval in order for the project to proceed are design related. One is a design package that has the architectural, landscape, and amenity plan. Recall that in the overlay, it was organized so that Area A boundary corresponds completely with the overlay boundary, with the boundary of this project. And as such, there was a requirement to bring before Mayor and Council so that you all had the final word and could look in depth, and I know you saw in depth and have reviewed in depth the different architectural features and design components. I know you can't see this site plan very clearly, but there's a purpose that I'm putting it up here. I will zoom in just a second. But meanwhile, just to focus for folks who are watching, the different buildings where you see A, B, C, etc., all of those letters have a corresponding set of elevations. So we're going to walk through just briefly so you can see each of the elevations for each of those buildings. But on top of the elevations is this very site layout. And that is the layout that is regulated by the overlay says that that the construction will be conducted per this layout, not just general layout, but the relationship of each of those buildings, A in relationship to building B, in relationship to, it's in the center of the area, the green space that Mr. Sorkoff mentioned. So we're going to zoom in just a moment. Mr. Sorkoff had also mentioned building A, so if you turn your attention to that corner, we're going to zoom in where it is on the corner of Hill Street and Alpharetta. And zooming in, you can see the detail, and this is just what I want to emphasize for you all, that when staff will be reviewing construction documents, we will be having the specificity on this plan if you adopt it as part of this package. Everything from the number and quantities to such as the parking spaces or to the dimensions, to the spacing between trees and where every tree type goes and every planting goes. So I wanted just to focus in on the area so that you could see the specificity that is included in the package. And it isn't illustrations, it's also instruction that will be required to regulate anything that comes through for construction. So including in that You see two areas where there's a little bit broader of a green space. That area we had mentioned that Mr. Starkov mentioned was a green space. So it's surrounded by 4 different buildings and a portion of another building. And then there's a green space on this lower part of the slide, which is where our current, if you can visualize where the current water tower is. When that gets removed, this is going to be a dog park. And I also wanted to emphasize that this is also a location where the park and ride, the Ubers and the Lyft, those ride services, the ride shares would be having their turnaround place. And I mentioned that specifically because I know Planning Commission was concerned and hadn't, what hadn't been as marked. And so we just wanted to clarify that the location of that as part of the overall design to make sure there is smooth circulation throughout the site. So now I'm just going to briefly walk through that each of the elevations, each of the buildings, that building A has a complete set of elevations that identify the heights of the first floor, the material type and the colors, and there's a rendering on the bottom of it. I know you've seen the package and it's been actually available for some time, the renderings. This I wanted to point out the detail that several of these buildings have 2 frontages. So not only do you have one extreme serious attention to detail, but then you also on the back side also have this extreme serious attention to detail because that's the back porch area. That's the area of where we want people to linger, and it's specifically designed that way. And so that one single building, that this building B was this example of that. Again, they have the specific elevations and all the materials and requirements. This is one of the other buildings. Similarly, this is one of the buildings, building C, that will be fronting also along the green space area. Building D.
Michelle, can I interrupt you for a second? Because you're pointing out something that's really important in contrast to the past.
Yes,
So
sir.
just for example, this is one of the things you've incorporated into this process, which is really impressive. And I'm not going to get too knee-deep in the codes, but for example, one of the things that councils have been presented in the past were pretty pictures, right? So there's a lot of pretty pictures in here, but look what's corresponding to the pretty pictures. I'd really like you kind of identify that. Just one example, you can see that you've identified all the way the description, the model, the manufacturer, the color finish, down to every detail of these particular buildings. So the pretty pictures are pretty pictures that have very specific makeups that are already identified of how it's going to actually look like this.
Correct, and with your approval, then this is exactly what staff uses when the construction documents come in. We're not conducting a review based on illustrations only. It's really the specifications, the architectural specifications.
But you got corresponding data here that supports what you're approving, which is huge. This is one of the traps of the past, right? Pretty pictures, but you didn't have the corresponding data. You've got the corresponding data in here to support the pretty pictures, like it's going to look like this, and everybody knows it in terms of, right? Both sides. Developer knows it, business analyst knows it, electeds know it, and the residents know it, because the resident's going to say, hey, you showed me the pretty picture, right? But what I love about this is you so clearly identified what supports the pretty picture. It's huge.
Your package, yes, sir. Walking through the different building types, which all have their own sets of material and specifications. What I wanted to also point out with one of the multifamily structures, because of the topography, there is a section of the building that has 4 stories. It's the section sort of on the left-hand side. We're facing the left-hand side on the screen, where there is an amenity area, and so and then as it comes down because of topo, then you can see where there's the 5 stories. So the heights on these are 55, even though there's a number of stories, or 4 stories or 5 stories. The height as measured is a 55, and that's what was put into the overlay. And then I just am showing again the demonstration of the specifications from the architectural requirements for the elevations. And I wanted to land with the final one because repurposing is, as was mentioned, is not an easy thing to do. And you have already found a new place for your police and meeting your needs for police. And at the same time, you are already having a way to repurpose an existing asset, turning it from a civic use to adding it to your inventory of commercial property. And so that's the rendering for that building for as a commercial space. So we recommend approval of the architectural and design plan that's been submitted into the record. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over now to Joe Cusack.
Thanks,
Always have
Michelle.
signs too. Sorry, you have to hear my voice a little longer. We have a second component that does require your approval, and it's another design-related material, and that is the master sign plan. The overlay that you approved instilled into it a regulation that said that a master plan specific for the overall district would be established and designed with a similar amount of specificity of dimensions, numbers, types, sizes, colors, fonts, and this is the package that was presented to you all as well, and this is the master sign plan. And again, anything that comes before staff, we will be looking against this master sign plan when it gets your approval. One piece of it is text, and it's several pages of just the text so that there's very clear explanation about the dimensions and type. And then there is a map that identifies locations of certain signs. One thing that our UDC sign code does not anticipate, we don't anticipate that you're going to have a planned district and that you're going to want to have district wayfinding and district-wide signage. Ours is focused narrowly on individual tenants, and so this master plan gives you a mechanism for you to see whether you approve of the overall design features, and then it also creates a sense of character and continuity. For example, the Canton Street post is just one architectural detail. So that post that is already along our street in the Canton area will be the same post that holds the signage for the standalone freestanding district identifiers. So what you're seeing here is one that's going to be a bit taller because as you're driving by, you need to be able to see it. Then there'll be also some that'll be a bit lower because they're going to be for the pedestrian scale and to create a more pedestrian-friendly environment. But again, what you're bringing in a component, an architectural component of Canton Street into the interior. Another sign, another wayfinding district is actually going to be located on the sidewalks. So as you look down, and the example you see on the right-hand side is Canal Street. So as you're walking, imagine as you're walking, you get the surprise of this architectural detail, this design with some wayfinding and character that gives you and pulls you in as the viewer, as a part of an experience. Similarly, there are there are district signs that will be for larger signs on buildings, and then there'll be lower, smaller size also for the tenants. A unique identifier is the medallion. So this is not as much a sign as it is really a design feature that will punctuate here and there throughout the district, either on buildings or for example, on maybe one of the wayfinding posts. One of the, aside from district signage, there's the residential signage. I'm starting here with the clubhouse, that this is a 2-story building. It's got a pitched roof, and they are proposing to have a crown sign. That is, that it's going to be up against the roof. It would be standing upright. Additional residential signage also seeks requests for a crown sign. Now, the crown signs are only allowed if it is one owner in that building. So even though it's allowed on a 2-story building, that 2-story building, like you just saw with the residential, it's one owner of it. It isn't separated with individual businesses having those signs. And this is just giving an example of how a variety of signs could be placed. So for retail and office, so here's an example of how the different signage type could look if they were placed against an actual building. You wouldn't have all of them all at once. There is a limit to the amount of signage that is allowed, just as the same as the UDC currently limits the total amount of area that you're allowed to have. But you could have that, whether it's a canopy sign or a wall sign, it could all comprise that. And here's another viewpoint, and again, this is the repurposed building, showing how individual tenants would have some of their signage options, and that would be a smaller projecting side. For example, on the left hand, you see the tenant, you see the, that's the largest that it would be on the second floor, showing the overall building type and identifying a building using a projecting sign. Sorry that I went on like that, but I wanted to walk through the variety that there's there, but also give assurances of the many pages of written text that limit the total amount, because it does wind up having the same amount of the total square footage for any individual tenant that your current UDC has. So with that, we recommend approval of the sign package.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you.
So, Mr. Cusack.
Save the worst for last.
My favorite city attorney.
I have many, many legal documents to go over with containing many, many pages at this hour of the night, so I'm going to try to condense it down and get us out of here a reasonable hour. So this is the important dates and the council actions to date for this transaction, and you might look at it and see there's a lot of them, but each one is its own specific milestone that we have met over the course of this transaction, and each one has been important in its own right. And we've communicated this, we voted on this each time because, like the specific scope of works outlined, there is a flow to this that has to go forward. These have to be adopted to move the transaction on to its next stage. Each one being very important in its own right. At any moment in time, the deal could fall apart, as some of these transactions do. I want to point out, in terms of the legal document, I'm going to draw attention to that April 28th date. That's roughly 6 months ago, give or take, but that is when the drafting of all these legal documents I'm about to talk about started to be drafting. It has been a 6-month labor of love, many drafts, redrafts, many different turns of the documents, many disagreements, many resolutions to those disagreements, and ultimately we have arrived where we believe from our side that we have protected the city in this transaction and we are comfortable moving forward. So it has been a long process, but a tedious process, but we're here tonight and we're happy to be here. The first document I'm going to outline is the post-closing agreement. The post-closing agreement sets forth everything that happens after tonight should the resolution be adopted. This is going to get us to construction. Everything that happens to get us to construction is contained in this. Anything that has to do with securing financing, permits, contractual agreements with general contractors contains in this, and this brings us up until shovels are in the ground. So that's what this process, or that's what this document is getting us to. It is taking us from tonight until that actual construction commences. So there are some additional things that need to be met. We have no concerns over the financing of the project, but there's still some agreements and things that we have to do to get to that point in terms of permits being issued. It also talks about our escrow, what is put into the escrow account. Atlantic deposits $400,000 into this escrow account. So like a typical real estate transaction, there is escrow funds that go into an account and are governed by this agreement. The next agreement is the reciprocal easement agreement. This is just the grant of temporary and perpetual easements that will exist for the property between Atlantic, the city, and the DDA. This includes access easements, construction easements, utility easements, drainage easements. The typical easements will see stormwater, sanitary, structural support easements that facilitate this mixed-use development. There is a mutual rights and responsibilities to this as well. I want to make sure that everyone is aware that the standard that is being adopted here is a first-class standard, and that is a first-class standard of like mixed-use developments for this area. So that is something that has been negotiated in this agreement. That's the standard, Atlantic wants to uphold. That's frankly the standard the city wants this development to be, is a first-class standard, and that's contained in this agreement. The next one I will talk about, next agreement, is the post-closing occupancy agreement. This one governs Building G, which has become one of our affectionate, buildings in this transaction, because that was the old police department. So it gets its own agreement because E911 will be staying behind until they're ready to move in at Sharpshooters. So they are going to be operating in that Building G, and under this agreement, there is a phased-in construction approach that allows them to operate and continue with their operations while construction is ongoing. And it's going to be starting on Highway 9, coming towards like phased in, so that those operations won't be disrupted. That was something that was very important to Atlantic. They didn't want their first impression in the city to be disrupting 911, so they have been willing partners and working with us and coming to this agreement and phasing in the construction that way. So that's going to allow for them to stay in that building and ultimately move in the first quarter of 2026 when they're expected to move into Sharpshooters. The next one is the next document's the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding for the Bond for Title transaction. This one just establishes the public-private partnership between the city, the DDA, and Atlantic. This is going to formalize that relationship. It's also going to provide for the parking deck, the infrastructure for which the city and the DDA are constructing as part of this mixed-use development. That's the city's portion, in which revenue will be generated from that parking deck. And this MOU formalizes this relationship that's going forward for this bond for title transaction. One of the other documents are the property deeds and closing statement. And I'll tie this into the closing on the land exchange agreement itself, but these deeds are going to formalize the land exchange, which is ultimately what was brought forward on April 28th. The mechanics of the land exchange are for municipal entities and county entities. We are able, as a municipal entity, to exchange land with someone else, provided we get the better end of that deal. So both sides have appraisals for their land. We have the interior parcel, and I'm pointing over to Highway 9, that we are exchanging for an outward parcel on Highway 9. That outward parcel is substantially larger in value than the interior parcel we are exchanging. So because of this, we are able to exchange that parcel, and ultimately the interior parcel is where the multifamily of this development is going to go, the multifamily mixed use. And then the outward parcel on Highway 9 will be a commercial office building. That will be part of the ground lease for which the land is given over to Atlantic for development. The closing statement is going to lay out cost to close, allow this project to move forward, and ultimately allow for development of the project. So that, I think I've summarized as best I can, and I know we have a resolution tonight that's a little wordy, but we would ask for a motion to approve a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Roswell supporting the Hill Street mixed-use development project, a resolution to sign all closing documents, the master sign plan, building plantings and landscape plan, and building elevations and design package for the Hill Street project.
Joe, thank you very much. Michelle, thank you very much. Jeff, thank you very much. Peter, thank you very much. We'll come back to you guys in a minute, I'm sure. City Clerk Nancy Long, are there any Roswell residents who would like to speak on this amazing item?
There's no public comment.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I am sure that there's comment from some council on this incredible project, and this is an incredibly complex project. It demonstrates a high level of sophistication, Mr. Knighton, of your team, and the ability of this team to handle a very complex project and deliver it with a very sophisticated private party. This is an amazing project, and the level of detail and complexity. I think having the DDA has certainly been, I think, impressed as well, as they've been a huge part of this, process as well. But understanding the complexity of this project is pretty impressive. And it's really taken a great team to kind of deliver this. Really impressive across the board. Peter, thank you for your leadership. Bill, thank you for your leadership. Don, thank you for your leadership. David, thank you for your leadership. Mr. Knighton, thank you for your leadership. And team Roswell across the board, impressive, incredibly impressive. It's really a testimony. This is a good test case for other cities. Like, this is an incredible project, And I think a lot of people can learn a lot from this. It's amazing. So, council, any thoughts, comments, or questions? It's really a night of celebration if you guys pass it. Councilmember Sells?
Listen, there are lots of things to tease out here. I'm trying to decide how best to focus the attention that I want to give to this, because it is an amazing project. I mean, I want to talk briefly, first of all, about the much maligned statements of work and how this project has advanced. We're playing three-dimensional chess here with pieces, some of which we own, some of which we don't, and bringing a project which is incredibly complicated and well thought out. I mean, anybody who doesn't think so, you know, if you're an IP attorney and you got some spare time, maybe you should read some documents, you know, because they're certainly here. So I would encourage that, and especially if there's going to be like the barbs thrown, bilge spilled about the forecast. The forecast here is, I have done forecasting my entire career for large projects and M&A, and this is as thorough a rendering of turning pictures and words and ideas into numbers and legal documents that mean that the fence is up, we're building this project, we're not going to sit here. When was the deal struck for the 93 apartments entitled? Wasn't that 2019?
2019.
2019. So here it's sat for all this time. So this is the way it's done. And I want to talk specifically about the scopes of work, because there were the DDA, the great work. I mean, I think when we did the first one, Alex, I called you and we talked about it. You know, getting through that, and with SEER and with the city and with the developer. So talk a little bit, just briefly if you would, about how these statements of work get the chess pieces moving in concert towards a successful close.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And in this case, we've got really two kind of statements of work, and we'll focus first on the DDA statements of work and the underlying MOU that we have with the DDA, and then we'll also talk about our consultants in this case here. Specifically with the DDA, you know, we have an overall MOU that we have with the DDA and the city to continue to work on projects of economic development importance within the boundaries in which they're allowed to operate. And in this case, the Downtown Development Authority has limitations within the city of those boundaries. That sets up the framework for how we will kind of generally overall engage with one another as we start to vision around economic impact projects. And then we start to get into the detail, and you see the intergovernmental scope of work number 1 early on in the process, which truly is the beginning of how we're going to engage in the early phases of this project. And it starts to outline, okay, let's talk about the finite details of what are we trying to accomplish? How does it fit within the mission of the city, but also how does it fit within the mission of the DDA and the authorities in which they have and are allowed to operate within the state of Georgia? And so that's scope of work number 1 that starts to outline how we come together and start to develop the deal. And then as you get into the second one, which is much later in August of 2025, we start to get much more specificity around what are the roles and responsibilities of the Downtown Development Authority as the deal comes together. And as we start to get more information around the land exchange agreement, what are the roles and responsibilities that the DDA will play in this very important deal using their authority and essentially powers under the state of Georgia. And that's why we've continued to talk about how the DDA is part of the partnership with Atlantic companies, using their authority under the state for economic development and redevelopment within our community, and in this case, the downtown. And it started to truly start to form, okay, what role are they taking as it relates to the parking deck and the parking deck operation, the land exchange agreement where we're transferring land to the DDA, and then the DDA is transferring land between Atlantic partners and facilitating this deal. And then how is the city going to behave behind the scenes in supporting the DDA and their work? That is also outlined in scope of work number 2. And that brings us to truly the structure as you see the overlay district, the issuance of the revenue bonds. That was all essentially generated because of that second scope of work as we refine the deal overall.
Sorry,
I'll stop there. I was going to talk about SEER next.
Yeah,
We'll
please
stop
do.
with the DDA. So as it relates to our SEER work, And I will go into more depth because I think this is a great representative example as we work on and we deliver at the end of the month our Q3 report as it relates to economic development. And if you can remember, we've talked quite a bit each economic development presentation about our cycle that we go through is the origination, where we start the project, and you see that as the letter of intent. That's where we started a year ago. And as it gets more and more refined, we move through the transition of the deal-making structure. And we have a series of scopes of work that we can onboard or offboard. If a deal starts to fall apart, we can stop working on a scope of work. And that is really important as we think about our consultant partners, whether it's legal, whether it's project management, or in this case, even with the DDA, we have the ability to work as a series of scopes so that if we decide that the deal needs to change or alter, we can quickly amend the relationship that we have with all of our vendors, including the DDA, in those series of scopes of work. And we'll map that out more visually so the community can travel along. But I think it's really important to see that origination, and to this case, getting to the final project, has spanned really about a year and a half, even beyond that, when you think all the way back to 2019 and how complicated these deals are. And quite honestly, we're only in the middle of that economic development process because we are now passing this project from our economic development team over to our community development team, as Michelle talked about, and the Mayor, you referenced. Now they have to go to the execution side, and they're only as good as the content that we've given them and the details that we have provided, not only through our consultant group, through our legal team, but also in partnership with the DDA, will ensure that our community development team is set up for success as they enter into the plan review side, which is another set of technical documents that they're going to have to work their way through.
Right, and this level, this is ready to execute for them. This is well thought out, and it's thorough, and it's telling them this is the timeline, and so all of that's moving together well. One difference between this project and perhaps the one that we deferred earlier, I want to talk a little bit about that. Specifically, in this case, we had a developer who had already bought land and had right to build a highly dense development on the corner of our main drag, most important corner in the city, one of the most important corners in the city. And so the ambiguity wasn't the matchmaking that we're talking about for the other one, which is where we are talking to the landowners all the time. I mean, that's part of those statements of work is that we're talking to our Grayfield property owners all the time and trying to match them with the project. So this is different than that. Here we owned it. So let's talk a little bit about how that project or how that process works, because what you and the team have done is build a series of events that include defining the project and then building a model and then refining the model and then getting this level of detail. So talk about how that contrasts to the other way, if you would, a little bit.
Yeah, I think in this case, as you think about the code and the right or entitled uses is really important to be thinking about that, at any time, a property owner, if they have the ability within the code to redevelop a project, can essentially move that project forward. They could submit for that project and deliver on that project. And so, we were working not only against the potential, I'll say, the approvals from 2019, where if we did not provide the right level of coordinated effort between the city, the DDA, and our negotiating team, the developer could have chosen to walk away from those negotiations and gone back to their original project. They had that option and that choice. We had to bring a compelling reason, not only from a quality of life perspective, which is important to the city, but also just from an investment perspective, which is going to be important to the capital markets. We had to marry those two things together, and that is a tall order. As Peter talked about the vision, you have to activate the capital market in such a way that they're incentivized to essentially enter into a negotiating process over 2 years to come out on the other end, 3 years, to come out on the other side with not only a better project for the city, but a better project for them. And that is essentially the maturations that we've gone through. And as I'm standing up here thinking, there has been a lot of different ideas that have come forward between the city and the developer of how we could make this deal work. Some of them functioned well, and we've taken bits and pieces of those projects. And what you have at the end is essentially, 6 acres of mixed-use development that is walkable, that provides green space for people to enjoy, that's going to provide programming. All of those things would not have been realized with the original project from 2019, but we had to push each other into that negotiating period, and we had to have the foresight of how do we move an entire police department in the middle of all of that, to get us to the point where we can be putting up fences and be ready to go in the next couple of months, quite frankly, with demo and capital stack and closing of this project. So.
There's my Harvard business guy over there, the CFO guy. This is a Harvard business test case. That's what this is. This is a fantastic business case. I mean, it is really an amazing story. And part of the story, Jeff, you're kind of outlining is, this is where it's really like, I hate to say, an amazing job by the elected leadership and by the senior leadership of the city throughout and out, because this took patience, discipline, and rigor. And you got to know thyself, and you have to stay committed to what you want and what you don't want. And too easy on projects like this, what happens is capitulation. Capitulation, and you don't get what you want. And you don't get, and Peter never misses a number, but I'm a corrective number on Peter. This was a $60 million project that's becoming a $140 million project. And you say, why is that important? It was important for a bunch of reasons. One of the most significant reasons it's important is because capital has not invested, in very limited ways, has capital invested in the city of Roswell over the last 25 years. The record's clear on that. And what was so important about this was to create a boundary-breaking infrastructure project that would invite capital to come back into Roswell, where capital is saying, capital, this can work. I'm willing to take a risk and invest again. And we're talking about serious capital. And so that's been a real problem for our city. And that's why one of the reasons, again, was we could have capitulated time after time after time and gotten a much inferior project. Discipline, rigor, patience, know thyself, know what you want, know that the end result is worthy, it's worthy of the patience, of the discipline, if you're willing to do it. And that's why the end result is so darn good. It's going to matter. And literally, Bill, this is a test case. I mean, you unpack this bad boy, this is a business test case from start to finish. And it really is a testimony to everybody on this dais and everybody out here that I'm pointing out. An amazing job. And I wish you guys, I hope the story gets told of the amazing job, because I know this much, the developer partner's impressed.
I got one more. If I may?
Yes, sir. Sorry.
All right. I want to explore one other area, and that is there's talk about this being a revenue bond and falling back on the citizens and questioning the forecast. And I want to specifically talk about that, because one of the things that I think it was Peter was talking about, the fact that we are ground leasing as opposed to just simply monetizing a piece of ground gives us a cash flow which we can leverage. And that allows us to do the borrowing. And I want to talk about that, plus the committed parking. I believe those alone, a very modest number from the additional parking covers the parking bond completely. And then at the end of that time, there's a kicker when they do sell that allows us, we actually could participate in the sale or recap of the property. So let's talk a little bit about all of the sources, and they're contractual in nature. They're not speculative in any way, that are supporting the bond offering.
I'm so glad we have a CFO. It's fantastic to be able
Even
to
if
pass.
it's Bill.
With Bill, it's fantastic to be able to pass this question on to him. I'll let him start, and then, of course, I'll fill in any gaps, or Peter can chime in as well.
Thank you, Jeff. I have to pay him $20 to say nice stuff about me. And I would also invite Peter to step in and fill in any gaps I might leave out. So the economic model that Peter referred to, that Marissa created, I've spent a lot of time with it, kind of put my auditor hat on it, tested a bunch of different scenarios. I think what's important to note, we talk about this kicker we get if the developer decides to sell or recapitalize and we get a piece of it. That's all contingent. And what's the great part of this deal is we don't need that money to service the debt. If for some odd reason, because developers don't stay long in projects like this, if they decide to stay the whole life of the bond, the revenue that comes from the parking, the revenue that comes from these payment streams that you see up here, the ground lease and others, continue to service the bond all throughout the life of the bond. That's really critical in a revenue bond, that we have a verifiable, contractually obligated stream of payments coming into the DDA, so the DDA can then make its revenue payments against the bond. And yes, there's a contingent pledge of mills, but it'll never be touched. So it's not like the GEO bond where you actually have to pledge real mills and real taxpayer dollars. This should never take a taxpayer dollar through this bonding process, through the revenue bond process.
Thank you, Councilmember Sells. Any of your thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Yes. There is a lot of people to thank, obviously, on the staff and the senior team and on the elected council. Just an amazing job. I also want to thank the Planning Commission. I want to thank the HPC. I want to thank the DRB. I want to appreciate their amazing work involved. They've been heavily involved in this. This project's been going on for a while, and they've been a critical part of this process. And I would be remiss, but I'm going to say it. Peter Sorkoff was the key to this project. A lot of us did some amazing things, a lot of us. And I can tell you, I negotiated on this project myself in 2022. We had a deal in the end of 2022. We ended up changing the deal for a lot of reasons. Peter came in and made this project dramatically better than I had it and the team that we worked with at that time. And Sorkoff came in here, Sear came in here, and the revenue streams to the city and how that's going to impact revenue streams and potential reduction of the offset of taxes and on the residential side, it's gigantic. And that's all Peter, that's all Sear, and it's a great investment by the city. So thank you, Peter, for your amazing work on this, wherever you go. Yep, there you go. Thanks, man, that's all you get. And don't expect any more. And thank you, Alan. Thank you, Lee. Sarah, thank you. Will, thank you. And Christine, thank you. Oh, you want to say something?
Very, very quickly. You started down the path, but
David, thank you.
let's keep in mind that we're not making this transaction happen right now if Sear and Peter didn't make the Summit transaction happen as well. So this is one domino creating the next domino that's creating the next domino. This fits right into your economic pod vision of taking care of the downtown, which is then going to leverage the midtown, which is then going to leverage the uptown, as well as the east side. But how this fits together with the parking garage being placed where it was placed, you know, things are really starting to generate. The interest is here. So very good job.
That's really well said. Number one, it's all God. God's behind all this, making this work, putting it together. A lot of good strategy coming together as a consequence. That's a great point. That's why I say to Bill, my Harvard business guy, this is a great business test case that you unpack and put all these pieces together. It's a phenomenal story. And thank you, David. All right. And thank you, Will. Mr. Knighton, thank you, sir. Honestly, it's late and it's hard to celebrate for something we should be celebrating and popping champagne because this is incredible. It's an amazing story, and it's a great story for the city of Roswell and its residents and the businesses. It's incredible. Thank you guys for being involved in it. With that being said, I'm going to ask for any other comments or questions from council. Okay. All right. Do I have a motion on the approval of a resolution supporting the Roswell Downtown Development Authority DDA Hill Street project and all documents and approvals necessary for this project, and the recommended motion, which I will expect to be stated by whoever makes it? Councilmember Sells?
Yes, sir, I do have a motion, Mayor. I would like to make a motion to approve a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Roswell supporting the Hill Street mixed-use development project. A resolution to sign all closing documents, the master sign plan, building plantings and landscape plan, and building elevations and design package for the Hill Street project.
Thank you, Councilmember Sells. Do I have a second to Councilmember Sells' what do I call it, motion? Seconded by Councilmember Mortland. All council members understand the motion as stated by Councilmember Sells, correct? All right. All in favor of the motion as stated by Councilmember Sells and seconded by Councilmember Mortland, please do so by raising your hands. Let the record show that the City Council of Roswell has approved this motion unanimously across the board, and the motion is approved. Thank you. Congratulations, Roswell. All right, last on the agenda is the city attorney's report, which we don't need, correct, sir?
We do not need it.
All right. Being that there are no other items, this mayor and council meeting of Tuesday, October 14th, 2025 is adjourned. Thank you for being here. Well done.
Congratulations.
Right?
Outstanding.
Got it done, baby.